Welcome to day 8 of our daily broadcasts here from the diplomatic zone at COP26 in Glasgow. We bring you COP26 here from our pavilion in Glasgow and also from our hubs in Nairobi, Stockholm, and also from Washington, D.C. And today we're going to talk about small cities and big impact. And we're going to meet changemakers from Samsø, Denmark, from Guadalajara in Mexico, and also from Mariestad in Sweden, to inspire the world. And my name is Katarina Rolfsdotter Jansson, and I'm co-hosting this together with my wonderful colleague Nick Natton.
Yes, great to see everybody here again. Yes, fantastic.
And Nick has a very long experience from the COPs. You joined the first one, and you were Director of Communications at COP21 in Paris. So, Nick, tell the audience a bit about today's theme.
Well, you know, We Don't Have Time is about solutions. We Don't Have Time is about optimism. It's about showing what can be done through different lenses, through the lens of business, through governments, through finance, through technology, digitalization, and today through the lens of cities. And starting with small cities, because sometimes it begins small, like an acorn, and it grows to a mighty oak.
So Nick, could you share an update of what has happened so far here at the COP?
Well, we're now in the second week of the COP, and we know that the Ministers of the Environment are now with us. This is a critical moment because we basically have, 4 days left, 5 days left, to actually have an outcome here at COP26. The big focus right now is on carbon markets between nations, but also between communities and between companies, and whether some kind of deal can be done on this. It's the last piece of the Paris Agreement that's not completed.
And every day we have this counting up here with us on stage. And Nick, tell the viewers, what is this really about?
Yeah, this is eye-watering, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, the International Monetary Fund, just before the COP, pointed out exactly how much money is being spent on fossil fuel subsidies. And what this counter shows you is how much money has been spent by governments subsidizing fossil fuels since the COP began. And it's now standing at over 135 billion US dollars. And we're very lucky actually this evening because I have a dear old friend of mine, Max Gamera, who is a UN official, but also a senior fellow with the Aspen New Voices. And Max, just tell us a little bit about the complexity of getting out of fossil fuel subsidies, but also the complexity of getting out of fossil fuels in the first place for many African countries.
Nick, that is a staggering number that you've just shown there, and thank you for inviting me to this. Of course, we must transition out of fossil fuels. That is not an issue. What is at issue with most African countries, as with most governments actually, is the economics and the politics of that transition. So take a country such as South Africa, for example. South Africa managed to negotiate an $8 billion deal with the European Union. Now, to be clear, that is such a laudable effort. But if it's not implemented well, it could undermine the very efforts that we're trying to do in transitioning out of coal. How might it do so? Well, there are two issues, just as an example that we need to be careful of. The first one is that the issue brings to underlight the issues of the justice issues that are related to jobs, the justice issues that are related to the ownership of stranded assets, such as what would happen to the coal itself, and the sovereignty issues that come up as a result. With regards to jobs, we've got to figure out what we are going to do with the people who are currently employed by the coal companies themselves. With regards to the stranded assets, we need to be figuring out who is putting a value on those stranded assets, and is the money that South Africa is receiving enough for it to be able to transition, or are we mortgaging South Africa a lot more into the future? Then there are issues around transparency, of course. We don't know what the details of that deal are in order for us to have a constructive conversation around it. Now you ask me, Nick.
Yeah, what are you going to? What should we do about it?
What should we do about it?
Yeah.
I'm sure there are many solutions out there, but what I would propose is that one thing that we could have done, and we should do here, is to create a financial framework, a global financial framework, and the rules of such framework where people could invest money, such as the $8 billion that the South African government has got. I believe this was actually the original idea that President Obama and President Meles Zenawi had 6 years ago when they proposed the $100 billion pot, which is still underfunded for now, but at the time, former Annex I countries were meant to invest in that.
Yes.
And I think that this would be a way of creating a lot of trust, a lot of transparency, and boosting up the $100 billion a year that we still have to find, and in order to go in there. Now, this $8 billion could have been in the $100 billion pot, and it would help us to meet the $135 billion tag that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah. And one last thing, Max, very quickly, which is it's in the interest of the world, but also the developed countries to get this right, because there is one power station in South Africa, for example, that produces staggering amounts of emissions. Is that right?
Yeah, you must be talking about the Sasol power station in Middelburg.
Yeah, and Sasol was an old apartheid way of taking coal and turning it into oil, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. Tell us how big the emissions that one plant is in South Africa.
Nick, that's staggering. I mean, that one plant alone is producing more emissions than countries, a whole country such as Norway, such as Portugal, such as Sweden.
Yeah, exactly.
And that one country, you know, there's been the number of people that are dying in that area from
because of the pollution.
Yeah. The suggestion has been that there are more than 300 people dying every year.
Good God.
Now, what is the price, what is the cost of one life that dies as a result? This is why it's incredibly important that we transition out of fossil fuel, but that transition has got to be just for South Africans, but for everybody around the world.
Good. Max, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for
being
having me.
available. He was just passing by. I couldn't resist it. We're opposite the South African pavilion. Great, Max. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks
See you
so
later.
much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks for inviting me.
So from this, we turn to watch the UNDP video about fossil fuel subsidies.
You okay? You need a minute? Cool. Okay. Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. And let me tell you, and you'd kind of think this would be obvious, going extinct is a bad thing. And driving yourselves extinct? In 70 million years, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. At least we had an asteroid. What's your excuse? You're headed for a climate disaster, and yet every year governments spend hundreds of billions of public funds on fossil fuel subsidies. Imagine if we had spent hundreds of billions per year subsidizing giant meteors. That's what you're doing right now. Think of all the other things you could do with that money. Around the world, people are living in poverty. Don't you think helping them would make more sense than, I don't know, paying for the demise of your entire species? Let me be real for a second. You've got a huge opportunity right now. As you rebuild your economies and bounce back from this pandemic, this is humanity's big chance. So here's my wild idea. Don't choose extinction. Save your species before it's too late. It's time for you humans to stop making excuses and start making changes. Thank you.
This is such a great video. Please share it. Hashtag DontChooseExtinction. At this stage here, we always connect with our hubs. So it's now time to connect with our first hub. And let's start by going to Nairobi. We have a hub in Mount Kenya University. With us there we have the moderator, Dr. Robert Ngunde Josephine. So let's see if we can connect with our hub in Kenya. And after that, we're going to our hub in Stockholm, and lastly to our hub in Stockholm, Washington, sorry. So hello, Robert. I see Patrick Yari at the back there. How are you doing in your hub today in Kenya?
Hi, how are you doing in Glasgow, Katarina and Nick? So yes, we are here at Mount Kenya University. We are very excited for today's topic on small cities, but also thinking of the last 1 week, as Kenya has been quite interesting from the news we are getting from COP26. Our government having joined the African leaders to sign the Giant Club Conservation Club, which is used, with the name of raising funds to address climate change mitigation programs, as well as discussions around carbon negative concrete technologies for built environment, something that they had discussions with the Japan government, but also importantly, and what was sort of the biggest highlight for last week was the Glasgow Leaders Declaration Forest and Land Use, which Kenya signed, which is a huge commitment given that we've been losing a large part of our forest, and that has been a big threat in terms of water. But today, this early evening, we had a panelist focusing on the discussion for today. She's called Anita Karaoke. She's a policy administrator at Conservation for Sustainable Livelihood Kenya, and they work towards transforming urban centers into more green cities and focusing on building capacity for circular economy, as well as reducing dependency on fossil fuels. So we had quite interesting conversations, and we are hoping that you are going to be building on this, going into this main broadcast. So Katerina, we are really looking forward. I don't know how is it going over at Glasgow?
Thank you very much, Robert. We're good here. We're happy to have you with us, as always, in Kenya. So thanks a lot, and we'll check back with you shortly, okay?
All right, thank you very much.
Great. So let's now turn to our hub in Stockholm. And the hub in Stockholm is also our headquarters of We Don't Have Time that operates out of Stockholm. Let's see who we have with us moderating from our studio in our hub in Stockholm. And after Stockholm, we go to Washington, D.C. We're delighted to be able to bring the world here into our studio and also to bring the world to you watching the broadcast. So, hello, Stockholm.
Can you hear me?
Hello, Sarah Shaban. You're moderating today.
Hi.
Terrific.
Hi. Hey, Nick and Katarina. Nice to see you again. It's been a while.
Likewise.
I'm still jealous of Patrick's and Robert's armchair, but, you know, we'll go on here in Stockholm. So it's good to be here on this 8th day of the COP26 Backdoor for a theme that's quite close to my heart. Because as a small town girl, I think I've always seen many people with a lot of initiatives or ID from small towns in France where I grew up. And they've always been struggling either with finding resources to apply this great idea they had, or power plays, for example. So it's going to be great to hear from our speakers from all around the world and see how they're tackling how they're implementing climate action in their parts of the globes, and hear from initiatives such as Viable Cities. And here we'll have with us actually Olga from Viable Cities, and she'll do a keynote from Stockholm. So that's going to be very interesting, and yeah, really looking forward to this evening.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah Shaban from the hub in Stockholm. And we're now turning to Washington, D.C., where we have the president of the We Don't Have Time operations, Dr. Shweta Chakraborty. So let's say hello to Shweta from the We Don't Have Time studio in Washington, D.C. How are you today?
Hello, Katarina and Nick. I'm doing very well. We're very excited here in Washington, D.C. to kick off week 2 of COP26. It's a monumental week potentially here in the United States as well. We've seen major legislation passed in the United States relating to building resiliency into our infrastructure against the face of climate change impacts. But now we need to see this Build Back Better agenda make its way through Congress. That's that $555 billion piece of legislation that can really reframe how the United States approaches climate change and its many ripple effects. So it's an exciting week at COP26. It's an exciting time in Washington, D.C. And today at COP26 is about loss and damages. And this is really something that is close to my heart. As somebody whose ancestry is actually from modern day Bangladesh, a country that is 170 million people and vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, like sea level rise. Today's actual COP26 is going to be getting into how to support these vulnerable countries that are low-lying, that are impacted by sea level rise, flooding, hurricanes, many other impacts. So I'm curious to see how the day goes at COP26. I know we have some incredible panels coming up in our pavilion, in our studio in Glasgow. And the one that we're really excited to share with you from Washington, D.C. is on green hydrogen. So we'll get into what is the role of green hydrogen in reaching net zero by 2050. That's soon to come. Stay tuned for that. Thanks a lot, and back to you, Katarina.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Shweta. So Nick, you take over for introduction of the next guest.
Yes, so this was very much a special request from one of our special guests, which was to have somebody from UNESCO on and their Biosphere programs, because Mariestad from Sweden, who is a very special guest, as we say on the show, with of small cities, big impact, also has a Biosphere reserve that they're actually within. So I'm very delighted with the magic of Zoom from Paris to bring in Meriem Bouamrane, and I'm sure she'll correct me on this when she comes on the line, who is Chief of Section Ecology and Biodiversity, Man and the Biosphere Programme of UNESCO. She's an environmental economist. She's coordinated the European part of this Man and the Biosphere network, the oldest and largest network of the world network of biosphere reserves. And importantly, she knows something about the Biosphere Reserve within which Mariestad sits, and understands just how important these reserves are and these towns and cities are in the climate change story. So over to you, Meriem.
Thank you very much, and good evening and good morning to all these hubs connected. It's really amazing to be with you tonight. Yes, in UNESCO, we consider that climate change is interlinked with biodiversity issue and addressing inequalities, like I've just heard from your previous speaker. And also it's an engagement from different groups, different stakeholders, from citizens to municipalities to cities, like we're going to hear in a few minutes, including private sector and young people. So today we have 727 biosphere reserves in the world network with 131 countries participating, and Sweden is very active with 7 biosphere reserves and very innovative. So the message tonight is that we have solutions everywhere on the planet, on different ecosystems, and that cities and urban cities can play a big role in both mitigating and adapting to climate change, but also to stop the loss of biodiversity, which again for us are interlinked problems and challenges that we have to fix together. And the stories of Mariestad that you're going to hear and the municipality are stories that are inspiring that change is possible and that we can address the issue of changing our way of living and consuming and producing, the way we produce energy, the way we eat, the food we are consuming, where it's coming from, the transportation and the energy. And I also hope that they have arrived in Glasgow with you, because I know that they have undertaken a very specific trip in a hydrogen car, and it would be great to hear from them about their trip. So it's about innovation, it's about not giving up, it's about sharing what Mariestad is doing in Lake Vernon Biosphere Reserve to the rest of the world, to Kenya, to South America, to Indonesia, and to make sure that this community and individuals that are committed for a better place, a better planet, that where we can live together, more respectful of the living, that it's possible to change now, today, our habits, our behaviors, and to be more respectful of each other and of nature. And we are celebrating this year 50 years of our program, and we have lots of solutions and lots of passionate, innovative people that can show that it's possible, especially in support of our young generation that have been demonstrating again at Glasgow and are asking for immediate and urgent changes, and for the governments to really take action on their commitment.
Thank you very much indeed there, Meriem. And I think it's also important to remind the listeners that in terms of realizing the Paris Climate Change Agreement, yes, we need renewable energy. Yes, we need to decarbonize our buildings. But we will never achieve the Paris Agreement if we don't take care of our natural world as well. This is part of the story. And it's so good that you could come on and remind people of that. I know that Mariestad wanted the world to be reminded of that through the lens of their Biosphere Reserve.
Yes, it's absolutely crucial to change the narrative. The IPCC and the EBES report are clearly indicating that humans are responsible for the alteration of our ecosystems and for climate change, like we have seen with the recent floodings and fires, including in Europe. It's touching all of us, everywhere. But the narrative can be changed, and this is what we do in the MAP program and in the Biosphere Reserve. Humans can become custodians, guardians of the living, and they can transmit that values of respect, of changing of behavior that is more respectful, again, of each other and of the other living species today. And this is, I think, the change of narrative that we are all committed to do, and that Mariestads, by sharing their story with you tonight, can show you that it's possible, again, everywhere, not only in Sweden, not only in Europe, but also in Africa, in Latin America, and in Asia. Everywhere on this planet, there are people who are passionate, innovative, and committed, and they have to be heard. And I'm very grateful that you are sharing their stories tonight, live from Glasgow.
Good. Thank you so much for being with us. And now I'll hand over the rest of this part of the show to Katarina.
Thank you, Nick.
Bye-bye, Meriem.
Bye. Thank you.
The next guest is WWF's Global Cities Lead. And she's focusing on the One Planet City Challenge that is engaging over 700 cities in 50 countries. She has over 50 years of experience addressing urban environmental challenges via holistic approaches. She holds a PhD in urban climate governance from the University of Wageningen and has previously worked at UN Habitat in Nairobi, Kenya. And the next guest, I had the pleasure working together with her in my hometown in Malmö in 2009, leading up to the climate meeting in Copenhagen. So a warm welcome to Jennifer Lenhart. Wonderful to see you here.
Absolutely wonderful to be here. I mean, it's really a privilege, not to mention slightly a competition with the South Africans who are enjoying fantastic wine at the moment as well.
Yes.
But we have fantastic conversations, so almost wonderful, the same thing.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, the One Planet City Challenge, tell us about it and maybe tweak it a little bit again towards smaller cities.
Absolutely, and it is a bit of a mouthful when you say it. So
Yes,
One Planet City Challenge, we sometimes call it the OPCC. What we do first and foremost is we help cities to do their data reporting, because all of the crazy ambition that we have, all of the plans, all the need to scale up the changes we need, it starts with reporting our data. So we encourage cities to report this climate data, transparently report the climate data on the joint CDP ICLE platform. We do this in alignment with trying to see that cities are committing to what they've already agreed to in the Global Covenant of Mayors, and this data is also helping them to get ready to be assessed by the city's Race to Zero next year. So we kind of see that, put the data in, and then we actually have an assessment framework where we can see how closely cities, according to their data, are aligned to the Paris Agreement and the 1.5 degrees Celsius target. Now, how does this manage for smaller cities? I think cities large and small, we all need that data in order to create those ambitious plans and actually see, are we on track with the plans that we have right now? Are we moving in the right direction? And there we are very keen to help the cities that we work with.
So Jennifer, why are cities so key to solving climate change?
Well, I mean, cities large and small, and I know we're talking really here about small and medium-sized cities, and I think, this is really exciting because these are the cities that are the hubs of the growth. Between now and 2030, we talk a lot about 2030 at this COP in particular, and between now and 2030, these cities are going to have the largest percentage of growth. And why does it matter in cities? Because, when we're here at the Climate COP, it can be really complex. There's a lot of big numbers. I mean, not just the big number on your screen right now, but big commitments. But climate change impacts people. Climate change impacts nature, and it happens locally. So city leaders are the ones that are really on the front lines of this issue. And when we invest in climate change, whether it is mitigation, adaptation, resilience, we're talking about creating a better life for our citizens, our communities, our local stakeholders, our local businesses. So really, in a city, it's about quality of life.
So Jennifer, in what key areas are things happening fast enough, and what key areas are things happening too slowly?
Well, I'd say it's both, always. I mean, we've been impressed to see quite a lot of strong and ambitious commitments coming out of this COP, whether it's on deforestation, on methane, on finance. So things are starting to move in the right direction. One can be cautiously optimistic. Nonetheless, are they moving fast enough? Absolutely not. Is it worth an organization like mine at the WWF, World Wild Fund for Nature, to really put that pressure and that momentum? Absolutely, because we know the urgency that's at stake. So, why is it important? Because it's about our children's future.
So Jennifer, when it comes to smaller cities, what in smaller cities is the biggest challenge to make this happen? Yeah, well, I mean, I think size matters. A city has to be big enough to justify investments, and especially when we're talking about large-scale investments, multilateral funds. Do these type of funds want to invest in small cities? It's also about capacity and willingness. I mean, a lot of small cities actually do want to do the investment, but do they have the staffing to be able to support an ambitious agenda? Do they have the resources? I mean, maybe they want to invest in a new energy plant or a massive green scaling retrofit, but do they have those resources? How can they harness those resources? Who do they work together in order to do so? I once worked a bit for the WWF in communications as a consultant with this huge, fantastic project. And my biggest learning was that all the experience that was put into the system could also be shared.
Absolutely.
So how about the need for, how about collaboration and the learning that we can do from each other?
Most certainly. I mean, our motto at WWF is Together Possible. And our role is not really to be an innovator, but to be an accelerator. So when we see those fantastic examples, and we have seen many, so there's reason to be optimistic, how can we make sure that we create a story that can be shared, a story that can be repeated in one city, in two cities, in one country, in multiple countries. Right now you see a lot of information about urban nature-based solutions, and this has become a topic that is really gaining momentum in Europe, in Latin America, in Asia, and it's really about improving that quality of life, rethinking how we plan cities. Transportation, let's talk about active transportation. Let's talk about green corridors in our cities that really can create connectivity for people and nature, but also for mobility. And this is especially in small and medium-sized cities. I've been a cyclist for many years in almost all the cities I've lived in, and small cities allow you to really get from one point to the other relatively rapidly, and this becomes a viable system of transportation.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer Lenhart, for joining us.
Absolutely.
And of course, sharing information, good examples is exactly what we're doing here today.
Yes, it's been my pleasure, and I wish you a successful session.
Wonderful, Jennifer. And now let's invite Ingmar Rentzhog, the founder and CEO of We Don't Have Time, up on stage to just tell us a bit about the app and how we can all push for change together.
Thank you, Katarina.
You're welcome.
The app, the We Don't Have Time app, you that have seen this broadcast before knows that we have those symbols. You give climate love if someone is doing something good, not just pledging it, but doing it. And if they are lagging behind, you're giving the climate warning. And I truly believe that those symbols could help change the world. We need less of the bad and more of the good. And what we especially need is to highlight all the good solutions out there. And we need to highlight it, those that are doing it, walking the talk. And therefore, I'm very, very pleased to have Mariestad here. It was actually 3 years ago. I had this phone call from Susanné from Mariestad. I'd never been there before. It's a really small city in Sweden. And she told me that no one cared about what they were doing. They were not getting any attention. Their mayor, that we're going to see here later today, attended a lot of those major meetings with neighbor cities. Everyone was speaking about we need to go fossil-free 2030, 2040, 2050, etc. But the mayor of Mariestad, Johan Abrahamsson, he didn't like that because no one of those majors will be around in 2040, 2050, or even 2030. So Mariestad decided to start acting. If others don't do it, they needed to do it. But they had a really hard time to get people to know what they're doing and why they were doing it. They were the first city in Sweden that did something with hydrogen. The Swedish government didn't understand at all because hydrogen was a new solution. Now, 3 years later, the whole European Union is racing in the green hydrogen race, and Sweden is joining, and suddenly Mariestad has become a major revenue model in Mariestad is to have this guided tourism from other cities, other majors joining the city and show that climate action is not something we're pledging, it's something we're doing. And I think this is amazing. So the first broadcast Mariestad actually joined us was already on Earth Day 2019. And after that broadcast, another city in Australia wanted to do the same. So now there's a city in Australia that we're going to hear more about this broadcast that have also learned and been inspired by what a small town in Sweden are doing. So this shows really that you don't need to be a big company, a big city to change the world. And what I like the most is that the Mariestad team, they did not take the train as we did. And I understand it because that was really a train trip. We arrived, but it was crazy. No, Mariestad did something else. They actually took one of their own hydrogen cars and they drove over 2,000 kilometers to Glasgow and showed that it can be done. I think that is super cool. That is worth more than one love. And if I understand it correctly, we're now going to show some video footage from this trip before we hear from Mariestad itself.
Yes, we are.
här nere i Bremen och tankar, fyller på lite extra vätgas på en helt vanlig självstation mitt inne i centrum bland hyreshus och allting.
Really, really inspiring to watch this video clip, isn't it? Now it's my pleasure to introduce the leading lady in Mariestad behind this transition, Susanné Wallner. She is business manager ElectriVillage for the Municipality of Mariestad. And as mentioned before, Mariestad is part of the UNESCO model area. It is a UNESCO model area for sustainability. And Mariestad's unique ElectriVillage is testing and demonstrating sustainable transport and energy systems to meet climate goals. And their work includes renewable systems and is really, as we can see here already, in the forefront for hydrogen solutions. So Susanné was previously regional councillor at the Jämtland Härjedalen region, and she's also run her own company before in the wool industry. And here she is, Susanné Wallner. Wonderful to have you here, Susanné.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. And you look fresh, even if you were driving for that long stretch all the way from Mariestad.
Yeah, it was really a journey. We started about 7 o'clock in the morning and we went to about 9 o'clock in the evening every 3 nights now. So.
But you had 0 emissions, and that is really, really what counts.
It worth it.
Absolutely. So the floor is yours, Susanné.
Thank you very much. As we talked about earlier here, as Katarina mentioned, we in Mariestad has a concept called ElectriVillage. ElectriVillage is a test and demonstration platform to make the industry more sustainable and reach the global goals. And what we did in Mariestad is to let the town be a test platform. And when we talk about that, it's also important to mention that you have to fail. And that's something we are really talking about, because when you do those tests, you have to fail, maybe you have to fail again, and you have to try to get more sustainable and try to learn something when you fail. So what we did is that we did this refueling station on hydrogen, and it's completely fossil-free, driven by sun cells. So it's the world's first refilling station with hydrogen and solar cell panels. And we also have about 11 cars in our municipality, driven by hydrogen, and most of them are in the home care. And what we also did, as you saw in the movie, is that we have a preschool that we right now are building. We started last spring, and it will be finished somewhere around next year, in early next year. And it's the same kind of system solution as you saw on the refueling station, with sun and storage for hydrogen to get warm and electricity on the preschool. And another funny project that I also worked with is the Kinnekulle Railway. And to mention it, the earlier speakers here told about Mariestad is in a Biosphere community. And the Biosphere community is very important for us because it's a designated area from UNESCO. And in this Biosphere community, we have special culture and natural values. And we want to keep them and vulnerable them so we could move forward with this railway we're talking about. And the Kinnekulle Railway, we have a new system thinking. And later on in this program, we're going to talk about the Kinnekulle Railway because we did a special thing there. We had a pre-study where we want to do combi tank stations. And those combi tank stations could refuel ferries, heavy-duty trucks, and the train at the same time. So that's an innovative thing we did in Mariestad. And we want to move on with that innovation thinking. And to be honest, in my work, we had some problems sometimes, as I mentioned before. But the most important thing here tonight is to tell you all that when we do this, we are allowed to fail. And as our major used to say to me when I started in Mariestad, if you don't fail, Susanne, you won't learn anything. So try to move on with the projects and do a good job. And that's what we try to do in Mariestad every day. And also to mention is that we have a school in Mariestad called Da Capo. And each thing is connected. So what we try to do is get education for circular economy there right now. So we could learn people to get jobs in this kind of fields of hydrogen. Because as we know, hydrogen is one of Europe's most forthcoming areas. And the union puts a lot of money in it. So it's going to be a lot of jobs there, and most of them, I hope, we will be able to also have in Mariestad, because we are in the forefront now, and we would like to proceed with this area to be more sustainable. And if you go to farming, for example, I want to mention this, because today you could have solar cell on the roof, on your barn, and you could drive a hydrogen tractor, and then you could put in the oxygen in a land-based fish farm. Then you have a circular, fossil-free solution, and that is what we're trying to do in Mariestad. So the things I want to say at last is, let's try. We have the money, we have the innovation funds, we have the taxonomy coming, so let's fail again, but most of all, let's be brave and try to move forward now.
Thanks so much, Susanne. Such amazing work you do.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask your colleague to join me.
Yeah.
So thanks for your wonderful presentation, and thanks for driving all the way here to show us that it's actually possible.
Yep.
Thank you. The next speaker is the mayor of Mariestad. His name is Johan Abrahamsson, and he is also is chairman of the Conservative Party Moderaterna's county association in his part of Sweden, Västra Götaland. And outside of politics, Mr. Abrahamsson is self-employed in tourism. So wonderful to have you join us here on stage, Johan Abrahamsson, for a short keynote.
Thank you. Thank you.
You must have been impressed by your colleague.
Yes, very impressed.
Excellent speech. So now you're up next, and again, we're very happy to have you and very impressed by your work. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I think too many people around the world make too much document. They do nice PowerPoint and do nice presentation, but it's not help the climate. I can promise one thing: a document not can helping the climate. So I think it's better you do things on real. In Mariestad and Sweden, we understand this. 2012, we decided we should do instruction revolution in Mariestad because we need more works in Mariestad. A little town like Mariestad can, example, close any street, and we can test L roads on this street. If you do this a big town, you directly get problem with traffic. They're the reason you said make it in small towns. And when you have tested this and this road example working, after that you can grow it up in bigger town. It's no secret. Some of this project we have tried in Mariestad not have flying, but there is the concept. Example, one more example. In Mariestad we understood if you not can tank a car with hydrogen, you cannot buy it. So there the reason we buy a station.
And when we buy this station, we see directly, here we can put solar pilot on this tank station, and we can make our own hydrogen. And now we produce from the sun our own hydrogen on this tank station, and have zero, and only water coming out from the car. They're the reason we drive this car to Glasgow, for show that we can do it. Because if people said you cannot do it, we do it in Mariestad. We are a little different. The same now, we have built a preschool in Mariestad because we think, we have a storage tank on this preschool, and on summertime we can save these energies on the sun give, and on winter time we can give electric and heat and to this preschool. For us it's important we work with the young children because they are the future. And hand on your heart, I think nobody in my age have started this trip if the children not coming home and said you must do it. So because the children have understand, is we older people do not have understand this yet, but I hope it's coming. And one reason, many people is very afraid to lose next election, because if you work with climate, too much or too little, people it's not interesting to vote to you. But I think it's better, if you do something, people start to like you. But if you don't do anything, people is not interesting to voting you. They're the reason you must do it. And I think it's better with carrot and whip. And you must do this together with company you have in your town. And I said one thing very clearly. I don't screaming, damn you. I don't say Mariestads will be great again. I said we should do it together with the people in town and together with company. And sometimes you must go in leader shirt when you are from municipality. Even if some people screaming very high that you shall not do it, some people write on Facebook you shall not do it anyway, do it for the climate. And I think one thing more, if you need a document or PowerPoint, do it after the test. The climate have no time to wait, not either Mariestad. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Johan. Wonderful to have you here with us in Glasgow. And well, you're not going to stay for a while, but good luck with the drive back home to Sweden.
It's been no problem.
Excellent, and fantastic inspiration for other smaller cities and bigger cities in what you do. Excellent. So the next speaker here is General Director at the Swedish Energy Agency. He previously worked at the Ministry of Environment and Energy, where he was the Director of the Energy Division. And he has also previously been County Councillor at a part of Sweden called Värmland, and held managerial positions at the Minister of Agriculture, later the Minister of Rural Affairs. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Andrén. Please join me here on stage for a keynote presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Dear colleagues and friends, thank you for giving me the opportunity to give some reflections on a very key topic for the climate challenge, cities. And let me start by quoting two UN Secretary Generals. The first one is Ban Ki-moon, who said, "We are the first generation that can end poverty and the last that can end climate change." I think that is truly inspiring because it says that we have everything in our own hands. And the other is Kofi Annan, who said, "The future of humanity lies in cities." And let's face it, if our cities does not become sustainable and climate neutral, we will not be able to end the climate change nor the poverty. And currently, over half of the world's population lives in cities. And urbanization continues and increases. And within the coming 2 or 3 decades, roughly 70% of all people on this globe will be city dwellers. Now this poses challenges, substantial challenges of course, but if we succeed in becoming sustainable, good sustainable city planners, I think that the opportunities are far greater than challenges, because a sustainable, climate-neutral city, to me, is energy efficient, has a fossil-free transportation system, has circular economy, has green electricity accessible to all. It's a much more just and equitable city, particularly to children and women, I would say, than the cities of today. Now, this sounds like a utopia, perhaps, but I'd say it's highly achievable, but not without major changes in how we go about things. Some requirements are needed. First, it requires elevated and systematic sharing of good examples and solutions. And we need to concretely share with others within the country and outside, between countries, on good examples, lighthouse examples that can be spread, used, even stolen by others, adapted and imitated, and applied to the local conditions of the cities. Secondly, it requires a clean energy transition. Thirdly, it requires more deployment of green innovations, technical, business models, policy development, both on a system scale, but also when it comes to unique components. And fourth, it requires much more cooperation, or rather co-creation, between public and private sectors, academia, civil society. It's a question of togetherness. And fifth, it requires courageous leadership on all levels, in all sectors. It needs leaders that walk the talk. And I hope to see that in Glasgow. And I think we see and hear that from Mariestad. True leadership, concrete ideas, moving forward. Having the courage to change how they go about things. And I'm proud to be leading an agency that actually is both co-funding that and co-creating with Mariestad within the program of Viable Cities and 22 other Swedish cities. We are pioneering the concept of climate city contract. And I think that we will reap the opportunities by doing so. And I would say, rounding off, ladies and gentlemen, that small cities can have big impact. Small cities that think big and move whole systems on a local level will spearhead what needs to be done. And I'd like to quote at the end Mark Twain, who said, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started." And I think that we and Mariestad and the 22 other cities have started, are getting ahead, and will reap the opportunities of a transition. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Robert Andrén. And if you would like to step down and be ready, because there might be questions. We're now turning to our hubs, and we're going to start in Washington, D.C.
Of course.
So we'll see what questions we get or what comments we get. So let's now swoosh over to Washington, D.C. and connect with Shweta Chakraborty and see if they have any comments. Hello, Shweta. Do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you. These have been very inspiring talks. And it's clear that some cities are really leading the way. And where our global leaders and where multilateral negotiations have broken down, we've seen local leaders and municipalities really pick up and lead the charge to overhaul how cities are facing the impacts of climate change and building that resiliency and increasing that adaptation capabilities. So what would some of these panelists say as advice to those cities that are finding resistance across different stakeholders in actually building that resiliency within the cities? So perhaps construction companies, that are still continuing to build in areas that are vulnerable, especially for cities along coastlines, or publics that don't want to necessarily change their way of life because it's scary to think about changing the way someone and a community has been living for generations. What are some of the ways to overcome this resistance at the local level?
Thank you very much, Ruth. I'm going to invite Susanné up on stage again. And I think she was not quite prepared. So if you can condense the question and rephrase it again, I'll be delighted. Thank you.
Sure. The question is, what is the best way to overcome some of the resistance that various stakeholders put forward in building resiliency at the city and municipal level? So if a public is resistant or a private sector that operates within that municipality puts forward some sort of resistance, how do we best encourage still this adaptation, especially in vulnerable cities worldwide?
Excellent question. Thank you so much. Susanné, it's been a long journey, but how do you deal with resistance and within your municipality, regardless of where it comes from, or maybe specifically from one direction?
If you look at the political side, I think you have to have brave politicians with courage to just support the official officers like me. That's one thing. And then you have to have a team, because now I'm standing here today, but I'm not the only one in Mariestad. We are a lot of people working in Mariestad trying to do this change. So you have to have someone moving forward, take the front, and then you have to have a good team behind. So my best thing to say is to have a good team behind it, because you can't be only one person driving everything. You have to get a good team to keep moving, because then when you get lack of ideas or lack of interest, you have someone supporting you all the time.
Thank you very much, Susanné. Are you content with this, Jutta? Would you like to ask something else?
No, that's great, thank you. We're just trying to get some of the cities to adapt quicker here in the United States. So this is all very good learning that we can take to local leaders that can be applied towards building resiliency across the United States as well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And thank you, Susanné.
Thank you.
And now we turn to Stockholm and see if we have any comments or questions from our hub in Stockholm.
Hi Katarina.
Hello, Sarah.
Hi, yes, very interesting to hear from Susanné och Johan from Mariestad, and really looking forward to going to Mariestad one day and visiting this amazing place. I have with me Åsa Minos from Viable City, and she has a question for you.
Åsa.
Yes, I have a question, and I'm really inspired to hear from Mariestad, from Susanne and Johan, and actually proud to work with them in Viable Cities in our efforts. But I'd like to know from Johan, do you have any advice in how do you build political legitimacy in taking the bold steps that are necessary in making the climate and sustainability transition happen?
Excellent question again. Go ahead, Johan.
I don't know. I think you must have leadership, and for me it's very important that you get so many people with you when you take a decision. Work very much, we out and work with company, and we have take lot of time to show that this thing outside Mariestad and people talking about Mariestad. There is our one idea.
Thank you so much, Johan.
Thank you.
You happy like that? Okay, terrific. So let's see what we have with us, what questions or comments we have. Thank you, Stockholm, from Nairobi. Let's see if we can connect with Robert Nugunde Josephine and his team. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Katarina. Very exciting conversation there and very inspired by the city of Mariestad. So I just wanted to get from Susanna, perhaps, whether how scalable is the ElectriVillage to be used perhaps in bigger cities? Because I'm imagining as much as we have big cities already existing, we should be finding ways to minimize or make them smaller in terms of carbon footprint as well as maybe densities and all that. How scalable is the work that they are doing in Mariestad to other cities, and whether that would also help us to scale down our carbon footprint? Oh, thank you.
It's Susanné again. You're jumping up and down here, Susanné. So if I got the question correctly, it's how scalable is the ElectriVillage, the concept, and also in connection to Kenya and this context. Did I get it right, Robert? Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very good question, because everything we do in Mariestad, we think like this. We do it in small scale to show that it's working. And when it works, we know that you could scale it up. So it's not a problem at all. Everything we do, you could scale it up to a bigger scale if you want to. And we think we have a lot of things now. You could just roll them out if you want to. So that's why we are here, try to show people to roll out things, because that's totally possible. And we could really have a talk with you even more later, so we could change ideas.
Excellent. And of course, this is all open source material,
yeah.
So it's just for spreading and sharing.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a website.
Yeah.
And there is lots of material there, but it's also nice to have the connection with well, like you can talk to Robert directly.
Yeah.
And share some answer more in-depth questions.
Yep.
So excellent, Susanné.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Robert, and we'll be back to you again from Kenya shortly. And now we are going to get some messages from to the world leaders from UNDP.
Dear world leaders, as a low-lying atoll nation, we are extremely vulnerable to the adverse impact of climate change. Tuvalu is facing existential threats due to climate change. Please pay attention to my story. The island which I'm standing on can only be seen during low tide. It is totally submerged underwater during normal tide. World leaders, we strongly urge you to take action now. Switch from fossil fuel to renewable energy to achieve the Paris Agreement of 1.5 degrees Celsius. We deserve a living without being displaced from our beloved country because of your doings. We deserve the right to live without fear from the unprecedented security-related risk of climate change. We value and treasure our identity, our culture, our ancestral land, our heritage, and the future of.
Yet another strong message recorded by UNDP. Let's see what messages we have gotten on the app, Ingmar Rentzhog. So join us.
Hi, Katarina. We have a lot of activities in the app.
Excellent.
But actually, I would like to talk on something else. And I'm going to write about it in the app. Because we're experiencing a very strange time today here at COP. You have, I mean, it's only a small fraction of the climate engaged people that are inside here, and some delayers as well, everyone that wants to have a say in the climate conversation. And the bigger crowd are outside this building.
Yeah, of course, that's the way it is.
And for me, I'm both inside and outside trying to push for change. I think that's needed. We need to change the system within, and we need to change the system from the outside, so they feel, so the leaders feel the pressure. But there's a danger here, because if we lose trust in society, we will never ever solve the climate crisis. So it's very important on how you're actually doing the communication, regardless if you're a leader, a major, a business leader, a governmental leader, a president, or if you're a climate activist. So communication is key, and I think the message of love is much more powerful than the message of hate. If you want to change someone's mind. For example, when we standing in the queue here to get in this area, we had a lot of activists out there. That's great. They needed. It's a very important job that people show the leaders that we need to act, and we don't do that enough, not nearly enough. But it's different kind of mythologies. The first sign, it was standing like this: "We are watching you." Really big signs. hey, you don't need to watch me. I'm doing everything I can in order to
Just like,
push for change.
just like most
and I
people.
think most people here, regardless if they're a major, a business leader, or a president, they're actually trying. It's really hard with international cooperation. If you listen to Obama's speech, he said the same thing. Some people need to be watched, but what's actually working is the next sign we saw.
Yes, we noted this on the way
And
in.
they had these drums that
They were actually
giving
dancing.
energy.
Yeah, dancing
They
their
were
message.
dancing and they were on a nice mood. Really powerful. And what the sign said was that we're counting on you. It's the same. They want to achieve the same thing, but it's totally different messaging. And I can tell you one thing. We're counting on you. That made me want to do a better job. And I started to think that all of you here, the leaders in this conference, are thinking the same. So think of your messaging and give more love. That's the message from the We Don't Have Time.
Excellent, Ingmar. I couldn't agree more. Thanks so much. This brought this first section to an end, and we're now entering the next section that's called Transforming Cities. We are now turning to Stockholm, where we have the pleasure to listen to Olga Kordas. Olga Kordas is Director for the Strategic Innovation Program at Viable Cities, and she's also Associate Professor in Sustainable Urban Development at the University KTH in Stockholm. And we already mentioned Viable Cities. It is Sweden's largest research and innovation effort for climate neutral and sustainable cities. And Viable City brings together cities, industry, academia, and also civil society to achieve the mission, which is climate neutral cities by 2030. And with also good standard of life, good quality of life for everyone, and also within the planetary boundaries. So now I'm happy to hand over to you, Olga Kordas.
Thank you very much. And hello, Glasgow. Hey, Mariestad. I'm so happy to be here today with all of you and also with our great friends from We Don't Have Time. So I would like to start by repeating the message from Robert Andrén, that cities are key for climate transition. Cities are covering only 3% of the Earth's surface, but they are responsible for more than 70% of greenhouse gas emissions. Cities are both the motors for innovation, but also they are causes for very severe problems and challenges of sustainable development for the future. So that's why Viable Cities, a strategic innovation program of Sweden for climate neutral and sustainable cities, has a mission of climate neutral cities already by 2030 with a good life for all within planetary boundaries. So in order to reach our mission, we are working together with 23 cities in Sweden, and they are representing 40% of Sweden's population. The cities are taking the lead in climate transition in collaboration with companies, industry, academia, civil society organizations. And then our mission is very important because it provides us with a common direction. And it also connects climate targets with other sustainable development goals. Because we believe that the climate crisis cannot be solved in isolation. So we need to think about multiple benefits of climate transition. So how are we working with cities? First of all, we are working by introducing the new modes of multi-level governance. It's both horizontal involving all departments in municipalities, but also companies, citizens, civil society organizations, and many other actors in climate transition, but also vertically, orchestrating efforts on local, regional, national, and European levels. We are also working with climate investing. We know that in order to succeed, we need to mobilize both private and public investments. And we also need to think about the available funds now and also target them or retarget them towards the climate mission. Viable Cities is doing unvisible visible by thinking about uncovering and highlighting the multiple benefits of climate transition as health or jobs or biodiversity. Third, we are working with innovation portfolios. We know that we don't have time and we need to accelerate transition now. We know that even though city leaders in Viable City that are having multiple international prizes for being climate smart, so they recognize that they need to accelerate climate transition and decrease CO2 emissions at least three times faster than they are doing now. And that means that the low-hanging fruits are not enough. We need to think about transformative system change and systems innovation. And systems innovation are across different levels of policies, of governance, finances, technology, and norms and behaviors. And in order to do so, we require interconnected portfolios of different efforts in different cities, instead of focusing on single point solutions or the best solutions that would fit all. And those don't exist because we know that there are a lot of unknown unknowns and known unknowns for the future. And we also know that city context would influence those solutions that fit some particular cities. So that's what we are doing with cities and much more. We're also working with a climate city contract, and this is our governance innovation in order to bring together many forces to facilitate and accelerate climate transition. So why Mariestad is important for us? It's important for us to have Mariestad on board because among viable cities, these 23 cities, we have both large cities and the largest cities in Sweden and also smaller cities. The large cities are important because they have large footprint, because they could have large impact as well. So they're also having bigger muscles in order to maybe attract expertise and also attract investments. But smaller cities are also very important because the majorities of cities in Sweden are smaller municipalities. And also the same is valid for other countries globally. Which means that we need to have city forerunners who would inspire many, many cities in Sweden, in Europe, and globally. So I also think that smaller cities could have advantages if you compare with larger cities. They could be more flexible and agile. Smaller cities could have it easier to break silo of different departments in municipalities and also mobilize both citizens and local companies because people know each other and used to collaborate and work together. So Mariestad is a fantastic city, and we have a privilege to work with Mariestad. And it's because of their high ambitions, their courage, also experiences they've gained already in energy transition and in mobility transition, but also because their innovative spirit. And there we have proof of that already shown on how they were kind of how they reached Glasgow for COP26. So I'm very confident that Mariestad will inspire many small cities, both in Sweden and also in Europe and globally. And I give my green heart and my love to Mariestad and also all the cities who want to drive the climate transition and be climate neutral already year 2030. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olga Kordas from Stockholm. And we will now move on to a panel discussion. And we have exciting panelists lined up here. Via Zoom, we have Jakob Rehme, who is professor and researcher in industrial management at Linköping University, which is a university in Sweden. And he's the director of the Center for Business Model Innovation. And he also conducts research about business models in complex business exchanges and relationships. And Jakob is conducting extensive research in the area of sustainability, energy, and the consequences for companies and public organizations. Hello, and warm welcome to this panel talk here at the COP Backdoor. And I also see that we are joined already, excellent, by Maria Gustafsson, who is from the city of Mariestad, urban development strategist. And Maria works for the implementation of Agenda 2030 in Mariestad and is also the project manager for the participation in the wonderful project Viable Cities. And Maria's interest in sustainable development comes from practical work and studies in agriculture and also in forestry. And we also have with us, I'm delighted to see Magnus Wåhlin, who is sustainability manager at the city of Växjö, which is also a fairly small city in Sweden. Magnus is a politician with a background in international sustainability work in Africa, Latin America, and also in India. He's a member of the party board of the Swedish Green Party and a delegate to the European Green Party. And he's especially interested in the issues of fair transition. And with us here in Glasgow, we have Karin Lexén. Wonderful to have you here, Karin. And Karin is Secretary General at Naturskyddsföreningen, the Swedish Society for Nature Conservation. And we were delighted to have your colleague here the other day. And Karin has many years of experience in environmental issues. And in 2016, you became the Secretary General for the largest environmental organization in Sweden,
Correct.
The Swedish Society for Nature Conservation. And you have previously held positions at the Stockholm International Water Institute and also the Ministry of Environment. So wonderful to have you with us here, Karin, in the studio here in the diplomatic zone. So I'd like for you to open up, and I'm going to start with Maria here. In a few sentences, tell us about the main focus of your work right now, driving change for a small city like Mariestad.
Yes, first of all, we're very glad to be a part of Viable Cities, and we really look forward to it. Yes, I think we will continue to our work, and we will work faster. We will involve more people, our companies, our citizens, the NGOs in our town, and keep up the work and do concrete things as we usually do.
Excellent, and you've come quite far already. So Karin, I'll turn to you here next to me in Glasgow.
Yeah.
The main focus when it comes to smaller cities, well, the transformation of smaller cities to tackle climate change, what is your major focus?
So for me, working with the Swedish Society for Nature Conservation, which is, as you said, the oldest and largest environmental organization in Sweden, founded in 1909, we actually have local groups in almost all cities in Sweden. So we work a lot together with smaller and bigger cities, and we find it super important what they are doing. They can really be the front runners, and what they are doing is playing a major role for combating climate.
Wonderful. And I'm turning now to Magnus. Give us a few examples talk about your major focus right now in this field.
Well, thank you very much. Well, since we 25 years ago said that we wanted to be fossil fuel free as the first city in Sweden. We have been working a lot with the central heating system that is now totally fossil fuel free. So the next step for us is to work a lot with transport and transportation. And we are now we are producing our local fuels, biofuels, biogas for our buses and for the cars. And now we are also looking on producing biofuel for aviation. So that's our main point right now.
Thank you very much. I'm turning now to Jakob.
Yes. And your question is basically what I'm looking at, or?
Well, the main focus of your work right now in this
Yeah,
field.
I mean, like one of the big things we've been working with is exactly with Johan and Susanné from Mariestad, and we're looking at this very much, as Magnus was talking about, as an infrastructure issue. So it's very important that the government and the municipalities are really in the forefront and driving these solutions. So I think that's what we've been working together with Mariestad about, and also in terms of joint collaborations with the local companies, but also nationally and internationally.
So what would you say, Johan, is the major obstacles in getting down to in time in 2030 in well, let's say smaller cities, which is the focus of today?
Yeah, I think there's one point that has been addressed today quite a bit, and that is to be brave and to actually realize that the governments have a really strong point, and the municipalities have a really should be like in the driving seat in terms of these type of transition, and to understand that we're actually rebuilding or building a new society, almost going back to the 1950s or 60s in the Western world, when we build our infrastructure and build our societies. Obviously, there are big differences now, but I think that is something that we need to get back to and look at some of the old models that we used to adapt to before, because municipalities and the government are really best equipped in actually taking on these types of risks. But we need to do that also together with the finance sector and with private companies. So it's a big joint undertaking for society, and I think that's a big issue, and which we can see really in Mariestad. That you need to be brave in this type of transitions.
Thank you. I'm going to start one question to both of Magnus and Marie, and also I'm going to start with Karin. In terms of policy changes, what is needed to increase the speed of this transition? First from your NGO perspective, and then from the city perspective.
So I was actually going to echo what was being said already. Courage is really important, I believe. And I also would like to echo that it's really important to see the role that the municipalities can play. So courage is the first, the sort of willingness to really put forward strong targets and objectives. And one challenge now would be, I think, to put carbon budgets to the cities. That would be sort of brave to do that.
And that's also related to policies, of course. This is a huge major policy that is
and different kind of economic steering instrument, of course. But I also think really getting the whole society, the whole municipality together, acting together. And I think you set a lot of good examples here from what I've been hearing. So really trying to get all on board and really identifying what each and everyone can do, and being brave and putting strong targets that are a little bit in the forefront, so that you have to fight a bit, but then can be really sort of happy and have a collective sort of thankfulness for being able and proudness of being able to reach that target.
Thank you very much, Karin. And Magnus and Maria, in terms of what is needed in policy, and you are working in the municipality, but of course there are other levels of society. We have the Swedish government, we have the EU. For instance, carbon budget, carbon tax. What are your reflections? What would be aiding you in this, in your important work? Let's start with Magnus.
Well, thank you very much. Well, think that carbon taxation is very important. It's a key issue if we want to steer people away from, so to speak, bad behavior that will increase the climate change. And I think it's very important to be brave, of course, but you also need to be proud, so that you can get the people with you in the municipality boards and say that we want to be in the forefront and we know why we are doing it. That includes, of course, also policy changing from the national and EU level, because what small municipalities is standing with is the costs for investments, and there need to be a very, very clear support for the economic investments, I think. Thank you.
Would you like to add, Maria?
Yeah, I think they've said everything, so I have nothing to add at the moment. Very good.
Thank you. Karin, you mentioned collaboration and well, connected to be brave, and of course this is the theme of today, to be brave, and also to set targets and goals. But how about collaboration? From your perspective as a leader of the largest NGO in Sweden, who needs to collaborate more and maybe less? I don't know, but more at least.
I think we need to collaborate more, most of us, and then speaking on behalf of the environmental NGO community, I think we still have a way to go to work closer with the forefronters, both when it comes to the municipalities, but also when it comes to the private sector, and to really try to find a common ground, because we need to get the whole society together, and then we need to find a common ground. So I'm a person who believes in dialogue, and I think dialogue is going to be really important to identify the key sort of difficult and challenging points. We might not agree, but we need to sit at the same table and try to find common solutions.
Over to our Zoom panelists, who would like to add a note on collaboration? Who needs to collaborate more? Go ahead, any of you.
I think we all need to collaborate more, but I think also it's sometimes our legislations and public procurement, etc., is also putting some hindrance to that. In terms of joint work and actually, instead of doing only collaboration in research projects, I think it's really good to actually do something, to actually do investments and buy things, and by doing that you also collaborate with private companies, and you actually act on the solutions that we need to do anyway. So I think that's an important part of the collaboration, and sometimes even academics can be involved.
Thank you very much. Let's dwell on what you just mentioned, procurement. I'd like to listen to Maria and also Magnus' take on this. In my part of Sweden, we had been very much focusing on innovation procurement, to sort of require things that are not really even innovated yet in order to push for sustainable solutions. What is your take on procurement and sustainable development, and well, specifically electrification that we're talking about here? Sorry, but transportation and in Mariestad's case, it's hydrogen. Magnus, procurement.
Yes, I think we are working quite actively now with the innovation procurement in the municipality of Växjö. We are one of 6 municipalities in Sweden who are working together with Fossil Free Sweden to actually sit down with the local companies and other companies to discuss what kind of products that we need. And this is a very important and big job, because we have a lot of procurement every year, of course. And it also means that you need to have test beds where you can try out new products. But if you are a municipality that are brave, then the local companies want to be on that wave. They want to be part of being in a municipality that is in the forefront, so that the companies also want to be in the forefront. And I think that is one of the successes that we have had in Växjö, where we have been saying for 20 years that we want to be the greenest city in Europe. And then now the companies are using that logo and they say we are a company in the greenest city of Europe, and that is beneficial for them. So I think a very close collaboration with the local private companies is a key here, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Your perspective, please, Maria.
Yes, I can just agree, because when we build the refilling station, also the preschool, we use the chance to use innovation procurement for taking that, having a new innovation. And we also want to help the local companies to develop new solutions, and that is the procurement, yes, a good way to go.
Thank you very much, Maria. I'd like to end with one question, and I'm starting with you, Johan, from a researcher's perspective. What have you picked up so far from a transition in cities perspective coming out of the COP?
I think there's a lot of momentum, and I think there's a lot of really interesting and fascinating ideas coming out from different parts of the world. And I think that the issue that we are raising today, together with Mariestad, I think it's a really good example of a city that's actually moving, and as Johan Abrahamsson said, he's not only talking, he's also doing the walk and also doing the drive now from Mariestad to Glasgow. And I think that's really inspiring for a lot of people, but also other municipalities.
Thank you, Johan. And I'm turning now to Kari from your NGO perspective. What have you picked up, and what are your hopes from so far from the COP?
Well, and this particular theme, I guess.
Yes, absolutely, of course.
So I think this gives me courage. I think, as you have been saying, that it's really what is happening on the ground that is important. So what is happening at the city level is super important in order to achieve what we are targeting for. And there are many examples when cities come together. I remember Paris, for instance, when the mayor stepped up and really formed a group of people that were really pushing, I believe, what was then happening. And I think this is also what can be happening. I understand that you need sort of national legislation, etc. But if you, the cities, are pushing for a change, then I believe that there will also be courage enough on the national level to follow and help and be proud of the cities that are really in the forefront.
Thank you very much, Karin. And Magnus and Maria, I'm starting now with Maria. What have you picked up so far? And also, maybe I'd like to rephrase the question to you, actually. How does it feel to be part of the COP? Because you are, Mariestad.
Yes, yes, it's wonderful. And what I've picked up, it's I think let the local people join the transforming. I think that's very important, that we really involve our citizens, and they should be proud of the work we are doing, and they need to know why we're doing things and what effect it has on the climate. And also that sometimes things cost a little bit more if we are going to try new methods and new technology.
Thank you very much, Maria. And Magnus, as a final note here, what are your reflections?
I think one of the key issues is, of course, dialogue. If you want to have some kind of democratic legitimacy for all the changes that we need to do, and we need to do them very, very fast, because we have very few years left to 2030, and we need to move fast. But you need really to focus on dialogue with civil society, with the inhabitants, with the local companies, and you need to have those kind of dialogues every day, so that you have an opportunity to have democratic legitimacy. Because if you don't have that, there will be no braveness among the politicians, and there will be no sharp goals set by the politicians. So I think dialogue is the key thing.
Well, thank you very much, Magnus. Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you, Johan, and thank you, Karin, here joining us in Glasgow. And keep up the good work. And thanks again for sharing your insights on this topic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I am now delighted to introduce, also next to me here, waiting to get up on stage here in Glasgow, Simon Holmström. He's member of the parliament in Åland, and Simon is an activist who became the youngest member of parliament in Åland because he was very frustrated with the lack of climate action. And he represents the Ålandic Party, and also called the Sustainable Initiative, which is now part of the Åland government. And Simon is co-founder of the Nordic-Baltic Youth Network, Regeneration 2030, and also a member of the Nordic Council. And Simon has taken the initiative of banning fossil fuels, join the Nordic climate targets, and also he's focusing on ecocide. So here you are, Simon, join us, and you have brought your flag from Åland.
Certainly.
You have
always.
the floor, and the camera is over there, so fire away.
Thank you so much for that. Life is local. It is in everyday life choices that very important decisions are made. And small actions, as we know, as we heard today, have actually a large importance when it comes to spreading the message and inspiring people. Also when it comes to cities, also when it comes to small cities and regions. And as the world is in urgent need of good examples now, it is my honor to introduce the Åland Islands, a pilot area for innovation and for transformation to a climate neutral society. I come from this island, born and raised. It's located in the middle of the Baltic Sea, between Finland and Sweden, a part of Finland, but autonomous, with own flag, own stamps, own parliament, government, and so on. A state in a state. And also demilitarized, neutralized, and a lot of other things internationally. We have 30,000 as a population, and 30,000 is actually the number that social scientists say that this is a population that is quite good for making transformations. Larger cities, larger regions have their bottlenecks. Small regions have theirs, but 30,000 is quite all right for transformations. So back in 2014, the Parliament decided that the Åland Islands should be fully sustainable no later than 2051. It was a bold decision. Very few parliaments have made such decisions about their jurisdictions. And what happened then was that the government of Åland, they wanted to make this into more concrete goals and more concrete roadmaps. So during a 2-year process, an inside-out, bottom-up process was conducted with civil society, with individuals, engaged, committed individuals, together with authorities and companies, to form a vision for the Åland Islands. And the vision is stated as followed: that everyone can flourish in a viable society on the islands of peace. And with this vision, we're able to feel attracted to what has to be done, and not just, talk about the challenges ahead. This vision is framed by sustainability principles from scientists. So it's not just the fluffy words, it is a definition that we're using, and it's also boiled down into 7 strategic development goals. So those are measurable. We can keep track of our progress, which is done each year through status reports. To foster action, we're not just needing documents and visions. We need a collaboration. So our collaboration is called Bärkraft, and it is a multi-stakeholder network formed not by the government, but formed by free people. I mean, freely, organizations, individuals, authorities, they come together, they say that we think this agenda, this sustainability agenda, which was adopted in 2016, we think this has to be done and we want to be a part of it. And the government, of course, has started with budgeting, sustainability budgeting, relating to these 7 strategic development goals. For this structure, the Åland Islands received in 2019 the EU Commission Sustainability Award for regions below 100,000 inhabitants. And it was by that point that the Ålanders fully understood that we are actually innovating, we are actually doing something which is internationally interesting. The Åland Islands welfare has, on a long time back, actually has been built by wind. And wind filled the sails by the large ships. We've been a seafaring nation. But soon, looking into 2021, our electricity demand will be covered to 70% of wind power after the new windmills being built. We are fully committed to be sustained by only renewable energy on the Åland Islands. But not just that. We also want to contribute to the Finnish and to the Swedish energy ambitions. So we want to have sea-based wind farms on Åland waters. And in our maritime plan, which was adopted recently, 1,000 square kilometers were allocated to 500 turbines with possibility to power to X. This is a great vision that the Åland government has issued, and energy companies are very interested in this. Small things as well are done on the Åland Islands between companies and citizens. So really, small committed societies can be pilot areas for innovations. With the Åland autonomy and fast decision-making processes, with trust, Åland is actually a perfect location for just that, for being a pilot to other places. Åland celebrates a century of autonomy, the power to rule, the power to be different, and we choose to be different. We have chosen to provide solutions to the global challenges. We are the place where the utopia is alive. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Simon Holmström. Great examples from a small government. Thanks again. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's now my pleasure to introduce the next key speaker who's with us via Zoom from Australia. And his name is Juan Donis. He's Sustainability Officer at Warrnambool City in Australia. And as a Sustainability Officer in this City Council, he supports the delivery of the carbon neutrality goals for the municipality. Juan leads the delivery of the Council's renewable energy and energy efficiency programs, which includes a power purchase agreement, solar PV, and also battery and emerging clean technologies. Excellent, and I actually said keynote, but it is an interview, so don't fret. We have agreed on an interview, Juan. Wonderful to have you with us here from Australia. Please tell us briefly about your work. I gave a little bit of an introduction, but what is your main focus, Juan, in your work right now?
Hi, Katerina. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Our main focus is in terms of reducing carbon emissions and energy usage. So I'm delivering we have the community have our 2040 plan, which established the aspiration for our community. And a key target for that plan is about environmental sustainability. We aim to be a carbon neutral city by 2040, and Council aims to be a carbon neutral on its operation by 2026. So I am working through a range of projects to be able to achieve those goals.
Thank you very much. And may I ask, how many citizens does your city have, or municipality?
It's about 35,000.
All right. And Juan, after having listened to the examples here from Mariestad in Sweden, well, they have many projects, but maybe the most groundbreaking project is their hydrogen project. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I was lucky enough that I have the opportunity to meet Jonas and Johan back in 2019 here in Bouamrane. So yes, we hosted a Swedish delegation back in 2019 as we started the conversation in the hydrogen space. We just look around the world to see what other countries are doing, and we feel inspired by the work that Mariestads is doing. And that initiated the conversation in the hydrogen. As a result, now local universities developing over a $20 million investment in green hydrogen and fuel cell manufacture and research.
Excellent. So we talked in the previous panel a bit about procurement. How do you address sustainability development and more specifically fossil fuel development and procurement in your municipality?
As well, we can employ in a council our procurement policies or procurement activities have an important section around sustainability. So where we can, we try to, with every activity or every processing that we do, to take into account sustainability.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm sure you've seen when you've watched our broadcasts here that we have this counter on stage that's addressing the humongous sums of money that has been fed into the fossil fuel industry in the shape of subsidies. In terms of your work, what is subsidies, fossil subsidies, play in Australia, especially in your municipality? How do you deal with this huge elephant in the room?
Yes, well, we can control what we can. So for council operation, we start transitioning away from fossil fuel. So as a part of the power purchase agreement, we are sourcing 40% of our electricity needs by renewable energy. That contract starting 1st of July 2021, and we will be looking to increase that 40% to 100% in the coming years, as well as reducing grid dependency and improving energy efficiency as much as we can.
Well, thank you so much. And you get a question that most of the speakers here get. What have you picked up so far from your perspective coming out of the COP?
That we are not alone. There are many people and many municipalities around the globe doing the same and working to have a better planet. No, there is not small effort. I think everyone is doing the best, and we need to continue down that trajectory, as well as just creating more partnership and working together to achieve the same goal.
Well, thank you so much, Juan Donis, for joining us all the way from Australia. Great to hear about your work, and best of luck. And it's wonderful to hear that you're collaborating with, well, for instance, Mariestad, because this is the way forward, isn't it? Collaboration.
It is.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
To be here.
Thanks so much. And the next speaker is with me here in Glasgow, so I can take those headphones off. His name is Mario Silva, and he's General Director of the Institute of Planning and Development Management at the Metropolitan Area of Guadalajara. Wonderful to have you with us here. And if I may introduce you a little bit better. This project was born from the commitment of the municipality governments and the state of Jalisco to respond to the climate emergency by developing a plan for the metropolis. Mario Silva, you're a key driver of the implementation of the PAC Metro for the achievement of the goals by 2030, aligned in an ambitious scenario, and you're working together with the leaders, many leaders of the metropolis, and you lead the processes for their follow-up. So this was just a brief flyover of your work. Tell us a little bit more, please.
Well, in our case, in front of the challenge of the climate crisis, it doesn't matter the size of the city, is big or small. We are sure that all actions are important, and in our case, we developed this Climate Metropolitan Action Plan with emphasis on three main objectives: mitigation, adaptation, and inclusion. And it implies put together all the efforts and the political actions and strategies from 9 mayors and 1 governor.
So if I just may ask, how many citizens does this really entail? If 9 mayors?
9 mayors, and our metropolis has 5.2 million people living there. So you can imagine the dimension of the effort, and at the end, the final outcome is this PAC Metro, that this is the short name that we use to talk about this tool. So we have the main objective to be a carbon neutral metropolis in 2050. So it's a biggest challenge, but we are sure that we can do that because now it's important to take actions from the municipal and the metropolitan level.
So I'd like to ask you, what are the major success factors that other cities, big and small, can learn from?
Well, take action. And understand that the climate crisis, it's happening now, and we have to have at the same time a specific route to take action, have objectives, goals, and strategies. And it's not important if you are in a small city with 100,000 people living there, or 1 million or 2 millions. The important thing is to have an instrument and tools to change the reality.
So Maria, from your perspective, which have been the major obstacles? Maybe just single out one, the biggest one, and how did you really tackle it?
Well, this is a topic here in COP26, and it's the financing, the climate financing, to have budget, particularly in local levels, to create, for instance, public transportation projects, projects on circular economy, or identify ways to face the facts of the climate crisis, specifically, for instance, strong rains in our communities, or some risk like that. So I think the financing is the most challenging thing now here in COP26.
And from your perspective, how have you been able to achieve? I mean, you do have some successes. I'm going to mention an award you're getting here this week very shortly. So how did you manage to get the funds?
Well, in our case, our governor presents some initiatives to have some additional budget. And in case of the municipal levels, we are figure how ways we can identify, for instance, the municipal taxes that exist right now. Urban licenses, for instance, it could be a good example to have maybe small budgets, but it's important to have this money to do things.
Well, excellent. And about the award, you are here, well, to speak, of course, on many occasions, but also to receive the UN Global Climate Action Award.
Yes.
That's big.
Yes, this is a big issue, and we share this award with the city of Paris, and also the city Samsø in Denmark. So we won together the category of climate leadership. So it's a big commitment with our community, with our people in the local and the metropolitan level, and we are so happy to receive this award.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And for the people viewing this, if they want to read more about your work, where do they go to? Well,
Imeplan is a technical agency in the metropolitan level, and we are working on the urban and land uses planning and the urban mobility also in terms of planification. And also we developed the international strategy for the metropolitan area, and we're very close with the 9 mayors. Each mayor is our boss, so you can imagine the challenge.
Yes.
But the work of our agency, it's important for the 9 municipalities and also for the state level. We work together, for instance, in electromobility projects or projects related with the management of waste and things like that.
So if you want to find more information, you Google Imeplan.
Imeplan, and well, we are from Guadalajara, the capital of the tequila and mariachi music, and well, That's it.
So it shouldn't be too hard to find information about what you're doing. Well, congratulations again.
Thank you, Katarina.
Thank you for joining us, Mario.
Thank you.
Excellent. And Mario mentioned that 2 other prize winners were Samsø and also Paris. Unfortunately, the representatives from Samsø and Paris could not make it here tonight. The Paris representative had to go to the City Hall of Glasgow to give a speech. So they're all getting a lot of attention, and hopefully traction from what they've achieved so far. So that means we are now going to our hubs directly for some comments. And I'd like to start by turning to Stockholm. And Mario, please join us. Stay with us here because there might be questions for you. Let's see what Stockholm has lined up for us.
Hi Katarina.
Hello, Sarah.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Exciting. Lots of wonderful information coming my way here.
I agree. It's very nice to hear from all these speakers. Actually, I've been in contact with most of them, so it's great to see them on stage or joining us by Zoom. I think something I've been thinking about right now, because we hear from so many different places, and a reflection I had is, for example, how many people do you know that there is a parliament in Åland that is making so many great decisions when it comes to climate action? And how many people do know about Guadalajara? And I thought of the fact that maybe we would need a better way to communicate about all these cities, all this amazing initiative they're implementing. So I just thought about the fact that we should have more cities joining us, for example, on We Don't Have Time, which is a great platform for them to communicate about their work. And I just wanted to ask the representative if they had reflection about the way we can talk better about how city works with climate action.
Excellent. So let's have Mario back on stage. I think Simon has left the building, maybe not the building, but the pavilion. So how do we communicate better in terms of spreading the wonderful work you do?
Actually, we're working on that right now. We developed, for instance, a podcast and a strategy on social media, but also there are a lot of people that doesn't have internet or this kind of tools. So we are developing the strategy of communication with the hand of our Citizen Metropolitan Council. And I think this is a great way to be in contact with people that live in the settlements outside of the urban nucleo in the metropolis. So I think this is the most challenging thing. It's not important what kind of city you are. You have been in contact with your citizens and the people in other communities, not in urban areas. If you have to work with other kind of audiences and targets for sprawl the message about the climate crisis.
So we don't really need to invent the wheel in every little municipality all over the world. We can communicate and share the information, in your own community, yes, but also in a global perspective.
And also we take advantage of some municipal strategies of communication because they have their own campaigns. Is the same with the state level. So we put together in the same table all the efforts, all the messages and all the budgets, because in terms of communication, sometimes we don't have enough budget to have big audiences connected. But I think this is why the Climate Action Global Award gave us this award, for our metropolitan mechanism to put together all the initiatives and efforts in the same objective.
Well, excellent. Good question, Isara.
That's great. Thank you,
Good question and good answer.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stockholm. Thank you, Sarah Shaban. And let's now turn to well, you can stay, Mario, because you might get a question from Washington.
Okay.
It's nice to have company anyway. So let's see, Shweta Chakraborty in Washington. Hello, Shweta. Do you have a comment or question?
Yes, hello, Katarina. Thank you, and thank you, Mario, for those remarks. So question for you, and I'm coming to you here from Capitol Hill, which is Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. And one of the challenges we face in trying to get the sustainability agenda to the highest echelons of governance within the U.S. is competing priorities. So there's a tension that is spread thin because of other social issues, of other economic issues. What is talked about very constantly in the US is the future of jobs and opportunities, especially for Americans that are really going to suffer from this transition to clean energy, at least in the short term. So what have you learned and what can you share with us that are lessons learned from Mexico more broadly in terms of how we can compete with other priorities and really ensure that climate change and sustainability make it to the top of the agenda?
Great question. Thank you, Shota.
Well, we have to identify ways to connect these debates. For instance, COVID-19. Why is important to take actions to face the climate crisis? Because the poorest communities with low incomes, with more urban and social risk, will be more affected for climate change. So I think we have to connect all those situations and problems in the same way, because it's not separately the social agenda from the climate agenda. And particularly the last year with COVID-19, we learned, for instance, with some disease and some health issues, create a bad synergy with COVID-19. So I think this is one of our learnings. And in the other hand, we here in COP26 to learn from other cities, the same situations, particularly social inclusion. I think this is the most challenging issue related with the climate crisis, because a lot of people be outside of this kind of debates here, for instance. So that's the things that I could say.
Well, thank you very much, Mario. Would you like to comment or ask something else, Shota?
That was great, Mario. Thank you very much for the work that you're doing. Very, very important.
Well, thank you very much, Washington. And now I'd like to ask, well, thank you again, Mario Silva, for joining us. And I'd like to ask Ingmar Rentzhog to join us on stage and talk a little bit about what activity we see on the app.
Yes, Katarina. The discussion we have in the We Not Have Time app is very much about accountability and transparency. It's a lot of question about what is good action, what is not good action, what is greenwashing. There has been a lot of talk about greenwashing. Someone has even outspoken that this is the biggest greenwashing conference ever. I think that we need to have that debate, because there's a lot of greenwashing out there, but there is also a lot of things going on that is not greenwashing. And we can't just say that everything is greenwashing just because something are it. And this is the exactly reason why I have found that We Don't Have Time, is to actually separate what is real, true climate action and what is just blah, blah, blah. So, and the way it works is exactly like Wikipedia. We are not an expert organization. We are a people power organization where anyone can have their say and give a city like Mariestad climate love, or if they're doing something bad. I mean, Mariestad is not, they're doing both good and bad. So they probably deserve some climate warning as well. But the point here is that if you go into the profile of Mariestad on our platform, you will see that most people are giving them love. And that's what counts. It's the sum of all of your action that counts. So I think that instead of blah, 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 use the We Don't Have Time platform and give ratings and focus on the bad and the good. That's how we change things. Just complaining about those that are trying will never ever change anything at all. That is my opinion, and that's also what is discussed in the platform. And everyone is welcome. Even if you don't agree with me, discuss it on the We Don't Have Time platform.
Excellent, Ingmar Rentzhog. Thanks so much. And this marks the end of this segment, and we're now moving into the systemic energy transition. And let's watch a little segment video before I hand over to my colleague Nick Naton.
Great, so we're now coming to the systemic energy transition section, and we're going to discuss things like hydrogen, but renewables, how we can fast forward those, and so on. And some very exciting new projects that are happening in these areas in different parts of the world. But before we get there, we have a keynote from Bart Biebuch, Executive Director of the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking. Hello. Since May 2016, Bart has been the Executive Director of the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, a public-private partnership aiming at facilitating the deployment of fuel cells and hydrogen technologies in Europe. Under his leadership, a strong emphasis on cooperation with cities and regions led to the creation of the the European Hydrogen Valleys Partnership with around 40 European regions. So Bart, you've got a 7-minute keynote on Zoom. Over to you.
Thank you very much for the very kind introduction. And yes, first of all, I would like to explain a little bit who the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking is. As you said, we are a public-private partnership. So back in 2008, the European Commission has decided to work together with the industry. So Hydrogen Europe, they are representing more than 350 companies, but also to work together with the research, with Hydrogen Europe Research Association, which is now representing 100 universities and research institutes. And then the public partner is the European Commission. And actually, the European Commission is providing us the financial means to support R&I projects. So to date, we're supporting 287 projects for around 1 billion euro of taxpayers' money, but also the private side contributes 1 billion euro. So more than 2 billion euro has been spent in the last 12 years in the field of energy. So making hydrogen through electrolysis, for example, but also in transport for road vehicles, off-road vehicles, but also for cross-cutting issues like standardizations and safety of hydrogen and so on. And so Europe is doing that not for the fun. There is a clear reason why they are doing that, and that is because we believe that by 2050, hydrogen can contribute to 24% of our final energy demand in Europe. And we can reduce then on an annual basis around 560 million tons and produce 820 billion euros of annual revenue. And at the same time, and this is very important because also the previous speakers were talking about, it's about jobs. We will create 5.4 million jobs in this sector. And that's why Europe last year, European Commission has made a European hydrogen strategy. And this has 3 phases. And the first phase is that by 2024, we use or to put 6 gigawatt of electrolyzers in the field, producing about 1 million of renewable hydrogen. Today, we consume in Europe around 10 million tons of hydrogen, which is unfortunately 96% is gray, but we would like to start greening that. And then by the second phase is then by 2030, where we want to put 40 gigawatt of electrolyzers and then produce actually 10 million tons of green hydrogen. We will do that again with the industry together. And then the third phase, after 2030, we believe that this technology will be matured and will be deployed massively at big scale, mainly to help to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors. And one of the instruments that we are using in order to accelerate the European hydrogen economy are hydrogen valleys, as you mentioned. And the hydrogen valleys itself, it started back in 2016, when we said, okay, but how can we educate regions, governors about what the potential of hydrogen is to help to decarbonize their region and create jobs and wealth in the region? And so at that time, I wrote to all the regions in Europe and I said, look, do you want to work together with us? And we will teach you about what hydrogen can bring to you, what are the opportunities, who are the companies in your region, where are the funding instruments. And then we have now sign up with more than 100 regions in Europe to work with them in order to work together on realizing hydrogen valleys. So far, we have actually realized now 3 hydrogen valleys in Europe. And what is very important, what is actually a hydrogen valley? A hydrogen valley has this the sectoral integration. So we have different sectors. I mean, you have the transport sector, and mainly we're looking then to the heavy duty. You have the industry itself. Think about steel industry, think about the fertilizer industry, the cement industry. They all need to decarbonize. And then also you have the heating and cooling industry. You need to heat up your houses, your offices, and so on. So what we want to do is to connect all those sectors through hydrogen. And one of the first projects that we started was back in 2015, the Big Hit project, where basically we produced hydrogen on the islands, and then we brought it on shore to be used to power some vehicles from the city, for the municipality, to power the ferries. That was still a small project, but now we said, okay, we need to scale up. We want to have a bigger, real European hydrogen valley. And then in 2019, we made a call for that. We put 20 million euro on the table for a European hydrogen valley. And that was the city of Groningen, or the Groningen area, North Netherlands, because in the North Netherlands, they have to go off from the gas. I mean, 20,000 people are working there in natural gas sector. So they decided to go for hydrogen. And so the project calls Heaven in North Netherlands, and they work with 31 partners. The total project is around 100 million euro project. And it's really connecting all these sectors. And also what was very important, actually, the whole project is supported and carried by the people there. They all want to help to realize such a hydrogen valley. And then we just started at the beginning of this year a third hydrogen valley. It's on an island. It's the island of Mallorca. We wanted to try to decarbonize the first island in Europe. And so the island of Mallorca said, okay, we want to go for it with hydrogen. And then they built, basically, it's again this sectoral integration where we use solar and wind to build hydrogen, and we use it in the various sectors. So we also brought then this concept of hydrogen valleys as an accelerator on a global level. And now globally, under the mission innovation, we have now more than 40 hydrogen valleys across the world. And and you can go to the website, there's www.h2v.eu. And there you can see all the hydrogen valleys. And what we would like to do there is to learn from each other. I mean, a lot of hydrogen valleys have different reasons to start with that, but the problems we face, the roadblocks, are all the same. And so we have more than now 3,500 data points. We share knowledge. And in June, we agreed now under the mission innovation to create 100 hydrogen valleys across the world by 2030. And so we will now soon start to doing that. And also in Europe, we will, of course, build more hydrogen valleys, also cross-border hydrogen valleys. So like several member states or regions working together cross-border. So I think my time is almost over now, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a flavor. What is a hydrogen valley? We believe very strongly in Europe in that it's a really good accelerator for the economy and also for decarbonizing your region. But also it is something that also the people are really believing in it, and they like to work with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bart. I would be very happy to ask you one question, which has been slightly gnawing at the back of my mind. But the issue of hydrogen as being a fuel, the issue of hydrogen being something that could contribute to climate action has been talked about for several years, and there's always been certain moments where hydrogen came forward as an alternative to other things, and then kind of slightly disappeared again and went down. This time it seems to be up on a really high momentum of interest from, yes, cities, but also governments, national governments, and from the industry. What has changed this time round? Why is hydrogen becoming something that everybody seems excited about? And I don't expect any time soon for it to dip in terms of being, you know, a wonderful thing. I don't expect it to go back to a quiet period. It seems very noisy about hydrogen right now.
Yes, it's true. Hydrogen now gets a lot of traction, and there are several reasons for that. Well, the first reason is that the technology is ready. As I said, we started back in 2008, and I know that the hype was just a little bit even before there was a big hype of hydrogen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it was a hype, and it didn't. I mean, it didn't got traction because the technology was not ready. We worked now more than 12 years to prepare the technology, test it in the field, bringing the cars on the road, building the hydrogen refueling stations, trying to decarbonize steel factories with hydrogen. We demonstrated that it can be done, and politicians have seen it, they touched it, and now they are making the right policies. I mean, look at the Fit for 55 that the European Commission has announced in July. I mean, it's wonderful for hydrogen, and this is good. So now I believe that we will be quickly now being able to scale up thanks to putting also the right policies in place. And then the second reason, of course, is the urgency of the climate. And we really need to start decarbonizing our economy a lot. I mean, the Paris goals were extremely important for us and for the hydrogen sector. And then also now the European Commission with the Green Deal also accelerated the whole focus on hydrogen, because the heavy-duty transport, but also the hard-to-abate industry, we can just not do it without hydrogen. And basically the politicians, they came to that conclusion. So we need it. That's the big difference.
Right. Good, Bart. Well, look, thanks very much indeed for your keynote. And we're now going to press on. We're now going to go to Shweta Chakrabarti, who's president of our US operations at We Don't Have Time, who wants to and is going to speak on the issue of green hydrogen, the Green Hydrogen Virtual Conference and its outcomes. Are you with us, Shweta? Can we link into New York?
Thank you very much, Nick.
Yeah, okay, super. Yeah, we're just a little bit early, so apologies.
No worries. Okay, that gives me some time to give a little context here.
Okay,
so
great.
in addition to being the US president of We Don't Have Time, I'm also the head of Top Tier Impact's Policy Action Unit. Top Tier Impact is a virtual global ecosystem of impact and sustainability leaders, and it partners with the World Economic Forum, the UNDP, and of course, us, We Don't Have Time. Top Tier Impact's Policy Action Unit was created to bridge the gap between private sector expertise and public sector impact policies. It's known as TTI. TTI's underlying ethos aligns to that of our partners. We face a global climate emergency. We all agree on this. To address this, many countries around the world have committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. This requires every single sector to work together. Too often, policymakers are viewed as being separate and with different priorities to wider stakeholders, such as investors, entrepreneurs, and professionals. The TTI Policy Action Unit convenes and connects through not for attribution, invitation only, consensus building policy conferences, where representative cross-section of stakeholders are facilitated to develop evidence-based action steps to achieve net zero. Out of each consensus conference, a report is produced that summarizes the agreed learnings and actionable next steps for all stakeholders. We make this report publicly available and use this report for key briefings. On September 27th, just last month, our unit hosted an invitation-only conference to determine the role of green hydrogen in reaching net zero. We invited leading scientists with a range of different opinions to put together a 3-page position paper with their views of the current realities, opportunities and challenges, funding needs, and actionable policy recommendations on this particular issue. We divided all participants into moderated caucus groups, where we asked them to focus on building consensus statements and concrete steps forward. I'm very excited to share these consensus statements coming out of our conference today, and the consensus paper is forthcoming. The 3 experts that we had for this conference were Randy Bell, who's the Director in Global Energy Security at the Atlantic Council, Tom Baxter, Senior Lecturer at the University of Aberdeen and Chemical Engineering Consultant, and finally, J.P. Clark, Professor of Aerospace Engineering and Engineering Mechanics at the University of Texas at Austin. He's also co-founder and board member at Universal Hydrogen. A little bit more on JP since he's joining us today. Prior to joining the faculty at University of Texas at Austin, he was a faculty member at Georgia Tech and MIT here in the United States. He was the Vice President of Strategic Technologies at United Technologies Corporation, now Raytheon. He was a researcher at Boeing and NASA, and the co-founder of multiple startups. We really are thrilled to have JP with us here today. JP, let's please start similarly to how we started your moderated debate on your 3-page position paper that was titled Potential for Zero Emission Aviation Through Hydrogen. What was the case that you made for the promise of green hydrogen? I'd love to get your thoughts on one of the consensus statements, but let's begin a little bit with your position so we can set the stage before we get into the consensus that came out of this effort. Over to you, thanks. JP.
Thanks, Shweta. Great to be here. Good to see you again. To our mind, we think that there's growing consensus, and we've heard about it just now, that hydrogen as an energy source would play if not the key role in transforming aviation into a zero carbon system over the next few decades. And the study I referenced when I put my position paper was the actual fuel cell and hydrogen joint undertaking study that it did with McKinsey. So I won't go back on that. But what I will say is this. We, and that's my co-founders of Universal and Hydrogen and I, see a confluence of technology and economics coming into play. And we've heard a little bit about that just now, where we have the capability to produce the hydrogen at a reasonable cost. And we have the capabilities to actually, in the fuel cell side, to actually create powertrains that could retrofit, for example, regional turboprop aircraft, certainly, small commercial, small aircraft, and then the combustion of hydrogen at the higher level, going into single aisle. So we see that technology coming along. But my co-founders and I, one of them being here as well, John Gordon, who you're going to hear from soon, we determined that the real stumbling block is the transmission. How do you get the hydrogen from the electrons, green electrons, make green hydrogen, and get the hydrogen to the aircraft? The pipelines are expensive to lay, trillions and trillions of dollars. The infrastructure, if you had a trucking network, is also quite expensive. And so we put our heads together, and came up with a solution, which is basically to create the equivalent of hydrogen batteries, basically a storage system that is lightweight, economically feasible. And what the idea is that we would be able to produce hydrogen at off-peak periods and at locations where there are green electrons, transport them by the existing intermodal freight transportation system, which is already paid for and is in existence. Of course, it will be electrified and made and actually powered by hydrogen too. So we'll have zero carbon in that link. And then we would put these modules, we call them, into aircraft and just consume the hydrogen directly as a fuel. And we think this is the right way to go, not only because of the technology and economic confluence, but because we're actually truly having green energy, green electrons, green hydrogen, no production of carbon at altitude, which is what you get with the alternative, which is SAF. Because even though you're extracting carbon in the ground, you're still going to be burning a carbon-based fuel at altitude. And so one of the things that we put in that paper, is that while there are opportunities and folks like us are looking at solution technologies that won't require trillions and trillions of dollars, there's some policies and funding that need to be put in place to enable and pull all of this together. And the first is that the hydrogen needs government incentives. And it doesn't have to be cash incentives. It could be production and consumption tax credits that will encourage consumption and adoption of hydrogen. Of course, also taxing carbon is a no-brainer. Second, there's going to be a lot of certification work. One of the big challenges in aviation is we don't have the luxury in aviation of basically saying, we're going to put something out there, and if it doesn't work, we pull it back. Right? We have to be sure and confident when we go there. So the certification process is onerous, but it is onerous by design, because we, as an industry in aviation, are one of the safest, if not the safest, transportation industry out there. And so we need to spend the effort, and the certification agencies need the resources to do certification well. And then last but not least, we need to build a pathway to hydrogen aircraft through a systematic step-by-step process. So we're able to incorporate the lessons that are learned in each stage, and the governments of the world need to basically be the avenue that brings all of those folks together. So that's it in a nutshell. Back to you, Sweta.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, JP. Thank you for your brilliance and everything you are contributing to bringing hydrogen-powered aviation into reality. It really is incredible to think about, and it's not too far away. So you mentioned your co-founder and colleague, John Gordon. We're thrilled that John Gordon has also joined us today. John is the co-founder, general counsel, and head of government affairs and partnerships at Universal Hydrogen. John was most recently deputy general counsel for technology and digital at UTC. Prior to that, he represented Airbus and Accudead in complex joint development projects and Berkshire Hathaway Energy in large-scale solar and wind projects. John, thank you. We're all together here thanks to incredible technology advances that you are very much contributing to with Universal Hydrogen. So I will throw this question to John, and JP, feel free after John's remarks to contribute anything further, since you were very much part of the consensus building process that we hosted through Top Tier Impact back in September. The idea was to really build some forward policy around where the scientific consensus was around bringing green hydrogen to commercial viability. So one of the consensus statements that came out of this effort was that we need to be referring to clean hydrogen rather than green hydrogen in describing the critical role hydrogen will play in reaching net zero. So while clean hydrogen we know has a role to play in decarbonization, especially in hard to abate sectors, its applications must be prioritized responsibly and where they will prove to be most viable as compared to other options. Can you talk about this a little bit, John? What do you think about this consensus?
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot there. First, thank you so much for being here and supporting decarbonization of aviation, which has been, aviation has been, I don't want to say ignored, but maybe it's been given a free pass for a long time. And it's one of the most pollutant industries out there. It's also one of the industries that really lacks a actionable roadmap to make a difference and meet Paris Agreement targets. You know, there are a couple things that you said. The most important I want to say is this idea of clean hydrogen versus green hydrogen. We're looking right now at a rainbow of hydrogen, and everyone is trying to be, quote, clean or be certified as clean or accepted by climate activists. And I think we need to avoid the colors. Clean is great, but I don't think we're hitting the problem on the head. The issue is how much carbon or other greenhouse gas emissions are being produced or offset when the hydrogen is produced or used. And I worry that maybe some of these fringy color hydrogens are going to try to get world that we're trying to avoid. So I think the goal here has to be zero carbon, zero greenhouse gas hydrogen in production and in use.
Awesome. Hearing you loud and clear with that.
I'll stop there.
JP, any thoughts to add?
No, I think my colleague has said it pretty clearly, so I don't think I could add anything to that. Although I always love to try to add something, but not in this case.
Great, thank you, JP. Okay, I would love your thoughts, John, on another consensus statement that came from this effort, which was that the role of hydrogen in decarbonization really does vary considerably. And there's a lot of potential in aviation, as we've been discussing, and there's additional low-hanging fruit that we can see this application really contribute to. So what do we need to think about in terms of where hydrogen could really be most effective and in the earliest timelines?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I totally reject the idea that aviation is a difficult to decarbonize sector when you have hydrogen on the table. Hydrogen is the killer app for aviation. And if we all got behind it, we would decarbonize entirely, true zero aviation within a decade or two. And we're ready. You can see our aircraft behind us. This is a converted regional plane. And this is a large percentage of the aviation market, but it also has a big global footprint that will really start to decarbonize and get rid of all the other bad stuff that aviation puts into the atmosphere that contributes to global warming. So for me, I mean, I'm an aviation person, but I have to say, I think aviation is the place to start for hydrogen. These planes consume millions of kilograms of hydrogen a year. They're all over the world and can be a real catalyst to meaningful hydrogen production, development, R&D. I think this plane, I think, is the place to start. But there are certainly other important industries that can be done with hydrogen that don't need infrastructure, that can use capsule delivery like we have here, including heavy trucking, rail, maritime. There are a lot of people looking at ports to decarbonize the heavy equipment there. I just think this is going to be the decade of hydrogen and will lead to the hydrogen age. All these industries need to embrace hydrogen. It is a true zero carbon solution. The time has come.
All right, and with the minute or so that we have left, we would love to get your thoughts on our last consensus, which was that in order for hydrogen to reach commercial viability, we need governments, and especially we're at these multilateral talks right now happening in Glasgow. So what do you want governments to support? How do we actually use some of these universally consistent instruments like carbon credits, taxing, that will allow industries like green hydrogen powered aviation to reach commercial viability sooner than later? What would you like to get out to the policymakers?
Let's tax carbon, tax it, and fund investment and fund research and fund new jobs. I don't understand why this even needs to be said anymore. We have all these industries like aviation that are getting a free pass, that are polluting the environment, and they're not contributing to the solution. I don't want to pick on my fellow companies in aviation, but they're not doing enough. And the airlines are not doing enough. And SAF is not enough. And these other things that they tout are not enough. They need to do more. And they're only going to do it if we tax them. And that has to happen, and it has to happen soon. And then we need to also shame the people that aren't working on these solutions, because they exist. And there should be no excuses.
Awesome, John. Again, hear you loud and clear. JP, any final thoughts?
No, I was just saying that, in answer to number two, there are other industries, for example, like construction, concrete manufacturing, basically, which have huge energy footprints that also could benefit from hydrogen. So, I think we need to figure out, and as John said, aviation is the killer app. It's a place where lots of energy is used and where hydrogen can be a very, very, very effective at changing the paradigm.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for the work you're doing, and we're looking forward to seeing all of this becoming reality sooner than later. With that, I will pass it back to my colleague in our hub in Glasgow. Over to you, Nick.
Did you say pub or did you say hub? I wish it were a pub, sweater, right now at this time of night. I'll go for the pub straight away. Okay, pub. I'm going to invite some gentlemen to my pub, not my hub. Come on down. First, in no particular order. Come this way and stand around here. That's super. So we got Jonas Jonasson, Head of Business Development at the city of Mariestad. I say it more with a German accent because I live in Berlin, not very Swedish. And Jonas has an MSc in BA Logistics and Process Management. He's heading several departments, including business development, also the driving force responsible for Mariestad's investment in innovative, sustainable energy and transport solutions, ElectriVillage. So you come here, Jonas, that'd be perfect. Right, lovely. Then I'd like to invite Nigel Holmes, who's the CEO of Scottish Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association. Come over here.
I've got my beer, Nick.
You've got a beer. Okay, so we now are in the pub rather than the hub. That's great. And He joined the Scottish Hydrogen Fuel Cell Association as a member in 2005 and became the CEO in April 2011. Over the past 10 years, membership has grown from under 40 to over 160 members and is now recognized as one of the most proactive hydrogen and fuel cell industry associations in Europe. I could go on. You can say a lot more than me giving a long introduction. We have a guest that should have been on the other panel, but he's with us now, so we're really pleased. So we've got Søren Hermansson, who is the CEO of the Samsø Energy Academy in Denmark. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Fantastic. And a winner of this UN prize this week as well, which why he was supposed to be in the same section with Paris and Guadalajara, but that's okay. And I think I've got somebody else coming in through the magic of Zoom. I've got Pontus Serin, Associate Professor.
That's correct.
Good, it was correct. It's very unusual for me to speak Swedish and be correct. In Sustainable Investments and Corporate Governance at Linköping University. Pontius graduated in mechanical engineering, and in the 1990s he was working in Chicago, implementing resource-efficient ICT solutions in Sweden at Ericsson Telecom, when they did telecoms, on the transformation to the digital society, and so on and so forth. Currently he's involved in several research projects looking into the role of hydrogen and other storage solutions. I've also got on the magic of Zoom Nadine Holtz-Zinger, Managing Director of Spillet. Is she or he there?
Yes.
Hooray, okay.
Good evening.
Good evening, Nadine. Okay, so Nadine studied environmental engineering and environmental and resource management. She is the co-founder of CEO of Spillet New Technologies, a consultancy based in Berlin, where I live, focusing on energy transition and the hydrogen economy. And Nadine has focused on supporting regional stakeholders in all phases of their energy transition processes. And I think I should go back to our friend from Denmark, because you didn't get a proper introduction, because you're way back down the schedule here where you were before. But I would like to introduce you properly. Please give me just 1 second. Okay, you're not Mario Silva, I know that for a fact. Søren Hermansson took on the challenge to lead the transition of Samsø from fossil fuel to 100% renewable energy, started as a farmer and ended up as the CEO of the Samsø Energy Academy, an independent NGO for sustainable community development, and you're the author of articles and books on these subjects. Jolly good. Okay, everybody, this is going to be a kind of bit of a free-for-all. You're all welcome to jump in wherever you like on these questions. We can get multiple answers and we can thrash it all out. So let me start the first one here. So a little bit what I said earlier, hydrogen is back in the spotlight as a fuel that can help decarbonize transportation and perhaps hard to abate sectors. Where do you see its role? Who would like to start with that first? Where is the role of hydrogen in our economy right now? Our American friends seem to talk about, they didn't say silver bullets, but they seem to talk about it being, you know, the next big thing. Is it the miracle thing that'll solve everything, or where does it fit into our economy, hydrogen?
Well, I think hydrogen is part of the big picture. So we're looking at big solutions for big problems. And I think hydrogen is going to be a future fuel. There's no doubt about that. So you could say that I'll leave it to the experts to talk about hydrogen and the potential kind of in a technical way, where I think that hydrogen might be kind of a shortcut to a diverse energy system. I mean, if you can make local projects work, then we can make use of local wind, solar, and production units to produce this. What I fear is that it becomes kind of centralized and large scale only, and therefore local community will be left out and kind of left to be customers in the shop of the big guys.
Okay.
So this is my conflict when I mean, just look into this as it is now.
So centralization versus decentralization, this is one of the challenges that might evolve.
I mean, if you look around the world, this is a COP meeting, also talking about the third world. And if we are looking at the big centralized solutions, then we maybe miss the point where we are talking about local jobs, local innovation, local economy that could be thriving from a more diverse production.
Nadine, do you have any thoughts about what is the role of hydrogen in our society? What is its position? Where should it be?
I think that the hydrogen has its position everywhere, so you can use it in every energy sector you want to. But I think also what has not yet been addressed too much today is that it can also play a role in circular economy. So in every organic waste that you have hydrogen in there, so you can extract it, and then you can even add a new energy source to our system and do not have to rely only on renewable energies.
Okay, so sorry. If I just understand that organic, are you talking about waste in our system could be transformed into hydrogen?
Yes, like plastics, like tires, like biomass, everything. In all these compounds, you have hydrogen in there, and you can extract it, you can do a chemical recycling, and then you can have hydrogen as a fuel, also from other sources than just renewable electricity. So this would reduce the need to build renewable energies in the world. So you have another source, a second source for energy.
Okay. Have you thought about that in Mariestad, getting hydrogen out of waste?
Not yet. We have just started our journey. We must be humble. My colleagues have talked about what we have done and doing about the refueling station and the preschool, but we have to moving on. And I think the hydrogen has the big role of storage and cutting the peaks and store from renewable sources.
Yeah.
And in that way we can produce food, for instance. I can talk more about that.
Yeah.
But I think we can use it for the transportation sector as well.
Johannes, you wanted to jump in there. Johannes. No, I do apologize. It's not Johannes, it's Pontus. I do apologize.
Yes,
Pontus,
my name is Pontus. Thank you. Yeah,
if everyone was called Johannes, it would be simple. Then I wouldn't have to keep looking down my list, but you all have different names. It's really complex.
I can go by Johannes. Okay, this is such an interesting period now where we have this parallel development path with the battery electric vehicles going on, but also at the same time we have the development of fuel cell vehicles. And we don't really know exactly where these two development paths will take us. But what we do know, we have a rapid development of battery technologies, making quite cheap storage for kilowatt hours in ordinary passenger vehicles. But what we can see is that applications for long-hauling, heavy-duty trucks is probably going to be reserved for hydrogen solutions. And when we talk about these hydrogen solutions, we can just try to apply them for the transport sector alone, since the transport sector is probably just going to account for 10% of tomorrow's hydrogen use. So we have to develop hydrogen solutions for the transport sector in combination with developments in the industry. And that is also what is taking place. We heard what is done by Mariestad, by Jonas and Susanné, Maria, and also their mayor, Johan Abrahamsson. But also we have actors like Volvo trucks and Daimler trucks that are finding industrial actors producing H2 green steel, they're producing green cement, and try to find opportunities to establish hydrogen refueling stations around Europe. And there are not that many refueling stations that we will need by 2030, according to a study made by Daimler Trucks and Volvo Trucks. So these two developments could go pretty nicely hand in hand.
Maybe we could just dwell a little bit on this theme, just for a few more moments. This tension between electrification and hydrogen. I mean, I understand from some people that they think in countries with very low emissions that maybe electric is kind of like more attractive, but in places with slightly higher emissions, hydrogen is more attractive. Some people say this, I've heard it said. And I know even though in Sweden there's some tension between even the truck area. There are some companies going electric, some companies very clear about hydrogen. Is this a fight to the death between hydrogen and electrification? Or is it actually, it's going to be something in the middle with them both playing roles in different ways in different economies?
It could be combined. It's perfect to have both solutions. Okay. The most important is that it's sustainable. It's good for the climate. It creates new jobs as well.
Yeah.
So the combination of electrifying with batteries and using hydrogen for producing energy storage and so on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're with the Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association. We keep talking about hydrogen here, and we're talking about electrification, but fuel cells were another thing. I mean, I'm old enough as a journalist on the Times newspaper in London in the 1990s, writing about fuel cells and hydrogen and electrification of this and that, and they all seem to stop, and now it's all popping up again. Yep. The fuel cell, is that coming back again big time? I mean, or did it never go away?
It didn't quite go away, Nick.
Okay.
It just didn't quite take off as expected. And now we're starting to see fleets of buses being deployed in cities across Europe, which is great. Mm-hmm. One of those cities is Aberdeen, and they've grown from just a handful of buses to a small fleet, a small proportion of the fleet, and it's going to go further. As the numbers build up, the price comes down, it becomes more cost effective. Mm-hmm. And a lot of this is about proving that the technology works in practice. But I'd just like to sort of reflect on some of the areas that you asked about. Is this going to be a battle between electrification and hydrogen? Actually, it's complementary. All hydrogen fuel cell vehicles have a battery, and they have an electric motor, so it's almost like an electric vehicle with the hydrogen and the fuel cell added in. Why? Because it gives you extra range, and that range can be really important in some applications. So trucks that go up and down motorways, travel long distances, the hydrogen gives it the legs. And there's a really great quote from one of the people who's leading climate policy in the UK, Chris Stark, heads up the UK Committee on Climate Change. And his comment, and I think this is appropriate for being in the Glasgow pub tonight, is that hydrogen is like Heineken. And what he means by that is, about 40 years ago...
It doesn't taste very good. Yeah.
Well, that's not what the advert said.
Oh, sorry. Okay, got that wrong.
You might remember this one. Heineken reaches the parts other beers doesn't reach.
Okay.
And the idea is that hydrogen now reaches the parts in the energy system that other fuels don't reach easily, or electrification might struggle. And this includes heavy trucks, buses, it could be industry, I think steel manufacturers mentioned, it could be hydrogen for domestic heating, so complementing electrification, complementing heat pumps, hydrogen, and as has been said before, it's got to be low carbon hydrogen. Yes. So the rainbow doesn't matter so much, it's got to be low carbon.
Nadine, I'm always very conscious of when we have people on Zoom and we have people in the flesh, as it were. Nadine, Germany, right? So Germany was always my hero, with renewable energy. I mean, I used to work for a man called Klaus Topfer, who was the former environment minister of Germany under Helmut Kohl. And we were always singing the praises of Germany with the Energiewende, and what was done there. And it was true, amazing. But then there were these other little stories that we didn't really talk about at the time that was about coal, but it was also about the car companies in Germany. It was felt resisting the electrification of Yeah, the electrification coming along, the electric cars. Is that changing, and is hydrogen playing a part in a new generation of automobiles in Germany coming along that are going to be electric or hydrogen? Is there a demand in Germany? Where do you see hydrogen fitting in transportation in Germany?
I think we need to distinguish between today and tomorrow, because there's lots of activities in Germany at the moment not only in the energy transition, but also in the transport, in the transition of mobility, like sustainable mobility. And there's a discussion at the moment that people tend to say, well, we need to have battery electric cars and hydrogen trucks, because we won't need hydrogen in cars because we just use them 1 hour a day and I don't know, for 41 kilometers per day. So this is what a battery can easily make. But when we then think or just look into the future and then say that, well, we don't want to have 45 million cars, private cars in the future, because this is not efficient. So we don't have the resources, we don't have the space, and we don't have the energy to produce all these cars, to just dispose them, to recycle them. So where we need to go is now to also have this 50% of efficiency target that we have to start working on that. So what we need to have is a car that is used like in a car sharing or ride sharing pool that is used around the clock. So, but then we will have to have also hydrogen cars in the future that are able to just run all day long and transport people instead of just parking at the site.
Right. Tell us why you won this UN award in Denmark. What is happening at the Samsø Energy Academy? I mean, you're a relatively small community. Yes, you're an island.
Yes.
Of Denmark.
Denmark is a small country.
No, it's not. No, it's a vast country with huge numbers of railway lines. And we got Mariestad as well here. What is the special thing that's happening in your area, like in Mariestad? Small cities, big impact. What's happening there?
I think the driver behind this is that everybody wants to play a role in life. I mean, starting with yourself, you want to play a role in your own life, and then the society you live in needs to be kind of playing a role in the bigger picture. Yeah. Like Denmark is trying to play a role in like wind power. I mean, we are looking at probably Danish wind turbines most likely, because we have developed this from a very early start when we decided to go out of the dependency on fossil fuels. Mm-hmm. We supported the industry big time to get this started, as Germany did with the solar panels, and as many countries has done with different technology that was kind of relevant in their industry. Yeah. And I think that is true. We need to feed into this so we can develop the technology big time and do something about it. Why did we do it in Denmark? Well, we don't consider ourselves as being a resourceful country in natural resources. Mm-hmm. So therefore, the dependency on fossil fuel from outside was a problem for us, because prices was going up and up and up all the time. And also the heavy industry disappeared from our countries because it was too expensive. Salaries and cost was too expensive, and therefore we exported it to Vietnam and Korea and China and other places also. So then what? So we had to come up with something new. So it's also kind of a driver for new ideas and new innovation that leads to more jobs and things we do here. And we need to do this because we are rich countries. And we need to be in the forefront of this also. We need to invest in the future. So even if it's not market ready, we need to do this also. But at the same time, we need to look after our, edges. I mean, I just came back from Mol. Before I was here, we were visiting Mol. And they have it was like a gale force 48 meters per second out there, and they have an average wind speed of I think 8 meters per second, which is really, really good wind potential. Yeah. So of course we should look at this and use this and give them the opportunity to grow wind energy and sell it to industry and the cities here also. So this is where we have had. That's why we are awarded. We have turned this into our kind of creativity, and we are teaching and exchanging our experiences globally. Right. We work in Indonesia and Hawaii and America and Australia and many different places with the local hub idea that we have to do better and develop this and capacity build the people who live there. So I think that this is generally why we have been awarded, not because we are in the forefront of technology. I leave this to these guys because we need to make them work on it so we can use it. and bring it out in real life and do it. I'm sure you also think that you live in real life, but in a daily person version, not industry only, because I mean these guys, they give us the answers before we have even asked the question.
Yeah.
And I think we should sometimes reverse it and ask the question, and then these guys can think about the question and come with some solutions.
Right. And just remember, it's no longer the local hub, it's the local pub. We've completely rebranded
But we only have
this.
one beer, so it's a very poor pub.
We've got lots of straws, though, so it's a healthy pub.
All right.
Let me maybe talk to each person here, and maybe we can start wrapping this up, because I'd like to ask each one of you, what is the most exciting project you're working on, and or, yeah, what could be the most exciting next steps development with hydrogen, with fuel cells, with this whole renewables transition? You mentioned waste, for example, Jonas. So maybe we start with you, Jonas, first. Okay. I mean, yes, tell us about what you said food, didn't you? Food.
Yeah, food
so
production.
Tell us about food production and hydrogen.
It could be a very good, interesting sector, because you can produce food with solar panels, wind power, cutting the peaks, storage in hydrogen, and using the extras from hydrogen, heat, and so on to produce vegetables in-house all year around, 24/7. And also fish farms as well. We can produce large scale of food. And then you need to transport it. And then the transportation sector is very important to develop, because it have to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Take for instance, when you are ordering things from internet, you generate transportation, and that transportation sector needs to be green.
Yeah,
that's the most interesting and important area we're working with, and want to do, to collaborate with new companies, come to Mariestad to establish, work together with our existing skillful companies in our town in Mariestad.
Okay, Pontus, what's exciting you at the moment?
Yeah. First, I would just mention very shortly, I think, unfortunately, a lot of German auto manufacturers, including the Swedish Volvo, are lagging behind big time regarding electrification. And they will see themselves shrink in size, except for Volkswagen. They are trying to keep up. So I have to side with Jonas. This project that he was mentioning about hydrogen in agriculture and using hydrogen in fish production, from fish in farmsteads, in old barns that are not used anymore for dairy production. That I think that is really interesting. But I would like to just mention one thing which we haven't discussed, and that is a problem. We have a lot of green hydrogen, so-called green hydrogen without any CO2 emissions linked to it in Sweden and in some other countries. But on a global scale, 99.3% in some ways of counting it, in some other ways, 96% of all hydrogen is based on fossil fuels.
Right.
And some of these 0.7% that we have left are called blue hydrogen, which is fossil-based hydrogen, where you have this carbon capture storage, which just has a very, very lousy efficiency, only capturing a part of it. And then the fossil fuel industry is trying to make this a green, a sustainable hydrogen source.
Right.
So we have to be aware about that.
So you feel there's a bit of a tension here. I mean, I've heard it raised before that some people have said in the past that hydrogen could be a get-out-of-jail card for the fossil fuel industry.
We need to focus and use like the flow-based resources, like solar, wind, and
But do we have enough electricity in the renewables area to actually do it? Or
In Scotland we
do we have to have more? We just have to have more, right?
But we need more, yeah.
Okay, this debate is coming back into Glasgow right now. So Pontus, you've really kicked it off there a bit. Nadine?
So the question was a project that is psyching me at
really
the moment.
exciting you. Look into your crystal ball.
Yeah.
I feel a bit. I'm not referring to as a crystal ball gazer.
Yeah, I think it's the regions. So it's about hydrogen regions. We are supporting lots of regions at the moment in developing concepts for a local hydrogen economy. And we have also developed an open source scenario calculator for regions with the support of the Toyota Mobility Foundation. And so in order to support the decision-making processes, to empower regions in finding a solution with hydrogen that fits into their regional context and that is able to supply hydrogen to meet the demand in the future.
Okay. I know I want you to talk about something because I thought it was so romantic and being British, seafaring and stuff. But we've talked about aviation, we've talked about trucks, we've talked about cars. We haven't talked about motorbikes, but I'm sure that's coming as well with hydrogen, or even mopeds. But ferries. Tell us about ferries, because I thought, and then if there's something else you want to mention too.
Well, yes, absolutely. So ferries, you really need those when you're on an island.
Yeah.
And around Scotland we have lots of islands. We have Orkney Islands, Shetland Islands, Western Islands, and in several of these they are looking at decarbonising transport, but shipping, marine in particular.
Yeah.
And Orkney is one of my favourite places to go. For me, what's important about Orkney as a place is that they have this real appetite to actually just do things, to make things happen.
Right.
And I think also on islands you have to make do with the resources that you have available. And I think what that drives is a mindset, an innovation, and a desire for change that honestly, I see on islands, but I don't often see in cities or in larger areas. And I think we can actually learn from the islands. And in Orkney in particular, so they are working on ferries, honestly. I'll get back to that. But what I also see is they can see the opportunity for scaling up hydrogen. So starting from the like Soren describes, the community projects, the distributed projects, where we can actually learn a lot from how the equipment and the demand all interact together. And on Orkney, they're now talking about scaling up with offshore wind and large-scale hydrogen production. So going from community scale to actually very large scale, as big as the centralized projects that Soren mentioned, but actually distributed around many different places. So I think that's a big opportunity. And when we do that, we can get the price of the hydrogen down. And that's also important because that will be the key that helps us to make that change. And it's a bit like you mentioned, is it going to be a hydrogen car or a electric car?
Yeah.
People don't talk about, I have a petrol car and it's better than a diesel car. We've been having this petrol and diesel choice for decades. And I just see hydrogen vehicles and electric vehicles as being a choice that the consumer can make. But we need to get the price of the fuel and the price of the vehicles down to a point.
Right.
Coming back to the ferries.
Yes, let's hear about the ferries, because I love the idea
back to the ferries.
Connecting the north of Britain with our friends in the Scandinavian
Absolutely, and it's
countries.
happening already. So there are links with, so the High Seas 3 ferry project involves partners from Scotland, but also several partners from Norway and elsewhere. And again, this is one of the big European Horizon 2020 funded projects that actually brings people together.
Yeah.
And much of the progress we've made in Scotland has been through joint projects with our countries, the Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, Horizon Europe, and we hope that will continue going forward.
Yeah, exactly. And let's hope it continues going forward with British involvement post-Brexit. Unbelievable. The only thing I'm a bit worried about the Orkneys is they might do so well with the hydrogen and all the other things they're doing that everybody from London will move up to the Orkneys and completely ruin it. So that's the only downside.
Or they might decide they'll go back to Norway because Orkney was part of Norway for many years.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Lastly then, from the Danish point of view, what's exciting you? Where do you see this going next, this journey with hydrogen or wind or any of the the issues we've been talking about just now?
Well, I think it's exciting to see what we took on 20 years ago, namely to kind of get out of the dependency of fossil fuels and go into the next era.
Yeah.
It's now kind of a general wish for kind of also the big structures.
Yeah.
I think that is really cool. We have a contract now with Mercedes where they have talked to us about being partners in a project they call the Future of Mobility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that why do they ask a little island like Samsø? Well, that's because we have been EU awarded, UN awarded,
Yes.
and also awarded from the European. But it's also because we have a drive that is a little bit unusual, like you say, on the islands in Orkney. We have been working with Orkney for many years also. I've been there many times, and I know the spirit of these guys. So the narrative of change is easier to define from an enclosed place than it is from a centralized industrial area. This is also why they want to make valleys and places where they define the project, like energy valleys or hydrogen valleys and stuff like that. I understand, because you need to define an area where you do the example like a living lab and then do it for real. And I think you can do it kind of simultaneously, test it with local populations on islands, and then develop it in the labs of the valleys. I think that is a grand idea, and I love that to happen.
Good. So guys, it's late. I say guys, I use that in a totally gender neutral way. Nadine, I'm sorry about that. But I want to say thank you to everybody for being with us on the show this evening, and maybe to watch the recording afterwards. We've had some reasonably okay viewing figures from around the world, and it was really, really interesting. Enjoyed it immensely. Thank you very much indeed. And now we will go to the summary and the end of the broadcast. I'll ask you gentlemen here to lead the stage. Bye Nadine on Zoom, and bye Pontus on Zoom. Thank you very much indeed. So here we are coming to the end. I'd like to call to the stage Susanné Wallner, the business manager of ElectriVillage for Mariestad Municipality, and Ingmar Rentzhog, the founder and CEO of We Don't Have Time. Wow, that was quite a session, and some really fascinating ideas at the end. Who's going to give a nice summary of this? Anybody want to sum up how they feel about it? What about you, Susanné?
Oh, it's been a fantastic night. Lots of interesting things coming up here, and it's been so nice with all our guests that we had in the program. So I think we will have a lot of after values of this, so to say.
I think so, yeah. I think lots of new friends out there, actually. Yeah,
exactly.
Indeed. And is there something about the spirit of an island that is just, incredible? I mean, is this where islands should be the laboratories for future humanity around the world?
Yeah, a friend of mine just saw us tonight back in Sweden, and she wrote to me. She thought it was so good program. She almost cried. So I feel very good in my heart now because it's special for us to be here.
Yeah.
And all of us in the team from Mariestad is really addicted. So
well, your mayor has stayed right to the end, which is a tribute of stamina above and beyond the call of duty. So well done, sir.
Yeah, of course.
Look, why don't you come and join us up here? Be on the stage at the end. You've come all the way. Let's have the Mariestad people up on the stage. And we're going to bring up, shall we bring up our new friend as well? Come. What's your name?
Francisco.
Francisco.
We need this.
Where are you from, Francisco?
I am from Colombia.
Colombia.
Yes, Colombia.
Cartagena?
Yes. I am from Bogota, but I live in outside. Yes. Outside of Bogota, in Villeta.
Okay. And
okay. He's from a town just outside from Bogota, which is the capital city in Colombia, and it's called Villeta. And he's really proud of living there because he's really close to the farm and to the rural area, but actually close to the capital city where everything happens. So.
Are you his sister?
No, I'm actually kind of a mentor. I met him.
The rules of the UN mean you have to have a chaperone, don't you? In these
he's actually here with his mom. She has been very supportive of him, and well, I just met him like over 2 years ago, and I'm a climate activist also from Bogota. So Climate Reality and also Citizens Climate Lobby volunteer. And I thought that it was important to empower these voices, and it was so interesting to see that he was so involved in politics, and he cared about it so much that it was very interesting, because Colombia is very politics is really tough topic there.
Yeah.
And seeing this young kid being so interested, and so it's very inspiring.
These people are from a small but a brilliant island in Sweden.
No, it's not an island.
It's not an island. Okay. It's from a small city in Sweden that is absolutely brilliant, and they've come all the way from Sweden in a car powered by hydrogen, not by petrol or benzene. Wow, these people here. And that's the mayor.
Ese es el alcalde, sí.
Yes.
Yeah, we just introduced each other.
Okay, we've got it. Yeah, okay. So we're just wrapping up here, the end of our show. So I just want to say hats off to your wonderful city, which isn't an island right now. It's just gone back to the mainland, but it's fantastic. I'm getting so confused because the other guy was from an island. I'm from an island off the west coast of Europe, a small island developing state called the United Kingdom. And Ingmar, do you want to just say a few things?
Yes, Sabina. I mean, the name of this broadcast is Small Cities, Big Impact. And I think we delivered on that here.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I think is the most important message, that you don't need to be big in order to have a big impact. You could be small and you could have a gigantic impact. So no one has any excuse anymore.
Yeah.
Because people don't act because they often think that they're powerless. But most people are not powerless. And if you have power, you have responsibility. And it's so, it gives me a lot of hope to see a mayor here and his colleagues taking that responsibility. But it gives me even more hope to see a young gentleman here taking a huge responsibility. I don't think you need to do it in a perfect world, but unfortunately, we don't live in that world, but we're going to create it together.
Yes.
Tienes un poder que él como mayor sí tiene que hacer algo, y tú estás muy chiquito y no deberías tener que hacerlo, pero le das esperanza a estas personas de saber que lo estás haciendo.
Pues muchas gracias por
Thank you very much
esas palabras.
for these words.
And don't worry, I've been short all my life. You know, I've been very small.
Toda la vida.
Yeah, just one of those things. Maybe my mother did not give me enough quesadillas.
Que no le dieron suficiente alimento cuando estaba creciendo.
Okay, let's wrap it up there. I think we just go from a fantastic evening, a fantastic day. Thank you so much. Thank you for and what's your name again? Francisco.
You would like to say a few words.
Okay, then we'll let Francisco, you can just say a couple of words before we go then.
Tu discurso, dale.
Okay.
¿Sí?
Look in the camera.
Pues bueno, yo
Well,
decía, soy de Colombia.
As I was saying, I'm from Colombia.
Y pues yo creo que los niños de Colombia,
I believe the kids from Colombia and all around the world,
de Reino Unido, de Suecia,
from UK and Sweden in general,
pues deben ser escuchados.
they should be listened, because the kids, we're not only the future generation,
sino también del presente.
but we are the present generation.
En el presente tenemos una voz
And now in the present we have a voice
y una forma de ejercer nuestra ciudadanía.
and a way to enforce or create our citizenship.
Muy importante.
Is very important.
Y en ese sentido, pues lo único que les pido en este
And in that sense, the only thing I ask in this space is first that you leave the frontiers and differences aside,
porque esta situación mundial
because this world situation
nos podría llevar a la sexta extinción masiva
could
de
lead
la
us to the
especie.
sixth extinction, mass extinction of our species.
Ya que por supuesto, claro, en un futuro
And of course, in a future,
y también en un presente muchos niños
and
más
our
serán
present, a lot of
afectados
kids will
por
be
el cambio
affected and impacted for climate change
global.
and global warming. In that sense, it's your responsibility as governments and entrepreneurs and private sector taking actions to govern for life. And of course, listen to the kids in these spaces like the COP26. Not just in the global north and Europe and USA, but also South America, Latin America, Africa, and Asia, that are the most biodiverse areas, as Colombia, which is the second most biodiverse country in the planet, but also the most affected areas. And evidently, we need that these spaces will show compromise, responsibility, and sincerity. Because governments are giving beautiful speeches, but these speeches are not being implemented in the territories, especially in the Amazon and the oceans that are full with contaminations and plastic. And these towns like Nordic countries that will be melting and the future are already having impacts on climate change. And thank you, that's all.
Thank you. And one day maybe you would like to go to Sweden in an electric car and go to this city of Mariestad.
En un carro eléctrico quieres ir a Suecia para ir a conocer la ciudad?
One day.
Of course. Whenever you invite me, and of course you are very welcome in Colombia to go see all biodiversity and all the richness, the true richness of Colombia.
Okay, guys, let's roll the music, please. Everybody, technicians, let's go. Bye-bye. See you.
a distant sound, closer, soon it's all around. Healing, time is running out. Come on, tell them what it's all about. We're running out of time, we're running out of air. We gotta keep it clean, show me that you care. Wherever you are, you got to wake up. United as a nation. There's a world to say, right or wrong, how will you behave? Do the right thing, as they used to say, more than ever, that is true today. Be part of the solution, switch it up for future generations.